What is up, everybody? Resident Evil fans, everybody in between. Welcome back to the Game Chamber. I think this is actually the second live stream that I've ever done. The last one was the one that me and you did, our top 10 most important video games to
Oh my
us.
God. That was like 2 years ago, right?
I'm telling you, at least it feels like it.
Yeah,
So, welcome, everybody. If you're viewing us for the first time, please click the subscribe button. This is where I put all of my video game content, reviews, rankings,
Oh, we're on the
live
shitty
streams.
channel?
Yeah, we're on the lower viewed one. So yes, please hit the subscribe button. Is where you're going to see everything like that. And while you're at it, hit the subscribe button to these fine gentlemen. We got over to my right here, Mr. CP Charles himself from Williscredia, and down below we've got T.O. Rudy from Gen X Reviews and Root Advice. And tonight, what we're going to be doing is essentially going through the Resident Evil franchise, just the mainline games, minus the 2 Revelations games. I was the only one of the 3 that played it, so I didn't include it. Otherwise, it'd be a boring discussion. So Resident Evil 0 through Resident Evil 8, including Code Veronica and the remakes. And we're going to talk about our experiences with the games, our memories with the games, and give our rankings along the way, similar to how we do the 31 on 31 debriefs, if you guys are viewers of mine on the main movie channel. So with that being said, CP, how are you doing? You recovering from your train accident?
Yeah, the wounds have been healing just spectacularly.
Oh man!
Don't trust me to drive in video games. That is the one lesson.
Yeah, for those that don't know what I'm talking about, so CP has roped me into playing Call of Duty, something that I swore to the gods that I would never do, and we've played a couple of times. And last night, I'm not going to play the whole clip, but this happened.
Fucking trains. I hate you. Oh! Dude! You didn't get out! What the fuck? Have you never seen a fucking movie before? What's wrong with you? Oh my god. That was so fucking funny to watch.
I haven't laughed that hard in a long time, and it was so much funnier live when you were playing it. You just see CP get rolled underneath 8 tires. So yeah, so that was last night.
Yeah, and we're like, I'm not a first-person shooter guy. Like, there's missions and shit that my therapist told me that
he could tell me where to shoot.
Yeah,
he's like, we're going that way. Kill everything between here and there.
I do all the paperwork, and Cody gets all the blood work done.
There you go. There you go. Rambo and Gandhi. So, Rudy, how we doing? We
I'm
all
good,
healed up in the undercarriage.
Yeah, and I'm producing like normal. I mean, I'm actually having great intercourse, and just have to, be careful and all that. So
there we go.
Oh,
yeah,
like
all the sutures are gone, and I feel great. I can go in more detail if you want.
No, yeah. I got another movie channel for you. Great intercourse and movie discourse.
There you go. I'm great, man. The fiance and the baby's upstairs, and things are going good. I can't complain.
Good deal. All right. Well, yeah, as everybody knows, well, at least I would assume everybody knows, we got the release of the Resident Evil 4 remake, 2 weeks ago now? It feels longer. Maybe many fucking times I played through it. 2 or 3 weeks ago. And that's what has brought us all together, is we got a new addition to what is my favorite video game franchise. And so we're going to go through in order by release, starting with the original Resident Evil, and we will kick it off there. So starting off with the OG Resident Evil was released to the PlayStation 1 in 1996, and many credit this game with basically kicking off survival horror as a genre in video games, and it has remained to be one of the most celebrated, influential video games of all time. And I'll start with Rudy on this one. So what's your memories and experience with the original, the OG?
As clear as day, like it happened yesterday, because I bought the PlayStation back in 95. I had my first job. I had overtime, and I had like a $1,400 check, and I was 18. I thought I was like the richest man in the world.
Yeah.
And I wanted to wait for the 64, but then the PlayStation was already out. So I bought the PlayStation. Everyone was giving me crap about it. And I'm like, no, I just have a feeling. I think this is going to be good. So Resident Evil came out, and I remember reading about it in a video game magazine, and it had zombies in it. I'm like, holy shit, I love zombies. Obviously, that's my favorite movie back to Return of the Living Dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always wanted to explore the genre of horror in video games, but no video game prior to that, in my opinion, ever came close to giving me the experience that this game did. it's one of the only few games where I dreaded playing because I was scared to play it. I mean, the audio, I mean, the graphics again at the time were state of the art. You had a 3D world that you can walk into, things were jumping out of windows, and the animations of the
A
zombies were going
perceived
up.
3D world. It was sprites.
Yeah.
It was they did it.
Yeah.
They did a fantastic job making you think you were walking around in the environment. So,
Yeah, and they're all like pre-rendered backgrounds and
Yeah.
such and all that. But the audio and the atmosphere, and just the fear itself for me, no other. I mean, there's a few Resident Evil games I go in detail when we go down the list, but for this one, it was my introduction to survival horror. And in my opinion, that's non-existent anymore. That doesn't exist in the Resident Evil franchise, including the remake with 4. But to have a game where it was so claustrophobic, in narrow corridors, limited ammo, and you couldn't save when you wanted to. You needed an ink ribbon to save, so it added more tension. So if you didn't have one and you were about to die, you had to look for an ink ribbon just to save the game. So I wish they would add that element back into the games, just as an option. Like, just add more tension and just like suspense. Like, holy shit, I better not die because I have to start all the way back over here. So for that game, to this day, it gave me nightmares when I was playing it. I love the story. It was a very big, like a low budget horror film type of story. The acting was just, horrible, but that's what gave it its charm. That's what gave it its charm. And in my opinion, it's one of my favorites of the RE franchise. We're not giving our rankings yet, right? As far as
we can do it. Go ahead.
Okay.
I mean, so the list of games altogether would be 14. So this is going to be his ranking out of 14.
Okay, this is my number 1.
Number 1?
This is my number
the original.
Starting off strong.
Because again, it brought something new to the video game industry that was not present. And of course, now we have all types of horror games, more action-based. But for this one, and the atmosphere provided, and the tension, that horror movie atmosphere in a game, and I was a protagonist, that is second to none in my opinion. I know everyone complains about the controls, but that's all we had, and we made it do. And the controls, learning them added more of the tension and fear to the game because you had to master that leaning curve with the tank controls to make it to survive, especially the boss battles. And that's my take on number 1.
Charles?
Yeah, I think I've told this story. It's somewhere on one of your many networks. I was a day one adopter because I used to get all those Game Pro magazines and shit. And back when Japan was hot shit as far as video games were concerned, and Microsoft and well, Sony is in Japan. I'll shut up now. Japan would have a great game 6 months before we did.
Yeah.
And in these gaming magazines, there's Biohazard's coming to America as Resident Evil, and all you had was pictures. You didn't have trailers. You didn't have fucking gameplay footage. It was just little pictures. And I just remember the picture of a zombie looking over his shoulder, and I'm like, "Oh, that looks pretty badass." And sure enough, whatever, I got it on release day, if not release day, release week, and got it on a Friday. Me and a friend of mine we set everything aside to play that for that night, and did not expect what we were getting. It, like the cheese ball intro, the Barry, where's Barry? Like it's terrible, but it was so like, this is they've nailed it. This is awesome.
Yeah.
And like you brought up, Rudy, I didn't even think about this. This was still kind of like transitioning from no memory to memory cards and saving shit.
Yeah.
And the ink ribbon was a hell of a way to like adapt.
It was cool.
Yeah. And the only way you found out was you oh, let me see this typewriter. Oh, if I only had an ink ribbon, I can save my game. Oh, all right. So I don't have to play this all night and just fucking eat shit if I die.
Yeah.
That was a really novel concept. But when the intro was awesome, but I knew that this was really something special and had capabilities that movies do. Like the way you said, Rudy, there was never anything like scary before this. Is that hallway. If you're in the mansion and you're walking down the right side, where there's just windows, it's like an L-shaped hallway. And by the time you get maybe 3/4 of the way around, bang, a fucking dog jumps in through the window, and both me and my friend jumped, and we're like, holy fuck, this is awesome.
Yep.
And
I think that's the first game jump scare. I got to Google it and find out that was the first jump scare I experienced in a game.
Yeah, I mean, people have gone different directions. Technically, they say if you go to the left, the zombie eating on the zombie cutscene where he's eating on the your other.
I always went that way first.
The left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get that class. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's badass. Don't get me wrong, it's badass. But the dog jumping through the window is. They've mastered the way movies do to get you to, because I don't think maybe there wasn't music or it was just quiet enough. I'm trying to put myself in the moment, but
probably just your footsteps.
Yeah,
but it had some ambient harm. Like it felt like it was in a haunted house. It was very scary. It was very atmospheric.
Yeah, and of course, me, I still learning the controls, so. You're not really sure how to run yet, and here's this fucking rabid Doberman Pinscherman jumping in through a window, and that's it.
So where does it rank for you?
Oh, well, it's high for it was high for nostalgic purposes, but I guess we'll get to something else later. It is 10th out of 14th on my list.
Wow. Okay.
They touched it up just for memory. Remember that?
We'll get there.
We'll get there. Yeah.
So I'm one of those poor bastards that for whatever reason I completely missed the PlayStation 1 era of Resident Evil. And I kick myself in the ass constantly for not having those memories as a kid. I was actually introduced to survival horror through the first Silent Hill, and I thought that was the most terrifying fucking thing ever. But I couldn't stop playing it. It was the weirdest thing. It was like I was a little masochist. I was like, I'm terrified. I don't want to enter any doors, but I can't put this bitch down. And so I played Silent Hill, and I think that experience exhausted me so much that I kind of stayed away from horror for a while. I didn't even play Silent Hill 2 when I got the PlayStation 2. So we'll get into the game that introduced me finally to Resident Evil. Retroactively, I have went back and played the game since. But the first game, my experience with it was heavily crippled by the time period in which I played it. I didn't get to play it back in the heyday. And I had actually already played the more pristine version of this game that we'll talk about later before going back and playing this one. So I really fucked it over, to be honest with you. So it's not very high on my ranking. I'll just go ahead and say it's number 11. And I felt like I was just out of respect was giving it that placement. But it is a funny game. Yeah. It is a funny game to go back and play, though, and you kind of see where things started. You get the tank controls, you get the really cheesy voice actings, like you were almost a Jill sandwich. And yeah, since you are the master of unlocking and things like that. It's almost hilarious. It's like going back and watching some bad 70s and 80s horror films, and you just have to either appreciate it for the time or you can just rip it apart easily.
Dude.
And if I can add it, because before this, all we had were 2D games like Nintendo Mario Brothers going left and right. So this is the first one you had left, right, up and down, so side, whatever. So it was us adjusting to that new 3D world. So that's the best we had. So we learned it so fast. But I also want to add that I want to, applaud the designers, with so much memory, so much game, to come up with the idea of having that door animation be a loading instead of it just saying they added the door animation. That was so terrifying because you had no idea what was on the other side of that door. So each door you open was terrifying.
Yeah.
And I've yet to experience that again in a game. Even when I just played Dead Space, the remake, nothing compared to that.
Dude, and they filled in the spaces with the loading times, like you said, putting something there that adds to the tension, and the cutscenes. Like,
yes.
Other stuff like I wasn't so affected by the zombie eating the stars dude with the blood puddle. It was when you were done outside and you had to head back to the mansion, and you get this first person perspective of something fast. And you're like, what the fuck is this now? And it's
They've
a
kept
hunter.
that trope too in the Resident Evil games. There's always something where you get the first person view and you're like, oh fuck, what is this?
Yeah, they did it in 4. I was like,
Yeah.
hey, they did it again. That's cool. Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to 2 because we're going to revisit some thoughts on this game here in a little bit. So Resident Evil 2 also released to the PlayStation 1 in 1998. And this is a pretty big fan favorite, I would say, for the classic era Resident Evil games. This one's probably the most popular one. Now, this is a game that I did have a much better experience with than the first Resident Evil because I played the GameCube port of it. After I got introduced to the series, I started looking at for whatever Resident Evil games I can get a hold of. And luckily, there was a port from, I believe, the Dreamcast versions or something that was ported over to GameCube. It was Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, and it got both of them at the same time. And of the original 3, Resident Evil 2 was the one that I played multiple times. There was just something about it that I really liked a lot. And, you know, I'll revisit a lot of these thoughts later on, but I really love the RPD as a setting. That's one of my favorite survival horror settings. It kind of has the aesthetic in spots like the Spencer Mansion with that really old school building. And then just like all Resident Evil games, you kind of, you move into like a sewer area and then eventually you're in labs. And so it keeps that kind of that same progression, but you had things like the liquors that were brought in that are still probably my favorite Resident Evil bullet sponge enemy, if you want to call it that, non-boss enemy. You had Mr. X in here. I love Leon as a character. He's my favorite of the Resident Evil protagonists, and Claire is a really cool character as well. You have to refresh my memory. Like with the original Resident Evil, did it have the same thing that Resident Evil 2 did, to where you have 2 different campaigns where you can only access certain things with certain characters? Like I know you had Jill and Chris, but were their campaigns fairly different?
Different. Yeah.
Okay.
Totally different.
Not by much.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Like 75% the same, but 25% different. Because I know
different endings too, that's for sure.
Yeah. Because with Leon, you had the whole side story with Ada, and with Claire, you had, I believe it was Sherry Birkin. And so there was quite a few differences there that I liked because it added that replayability. And that's one of the reasons why I went back and forth and played them quite a bit. But yeah, another game that I wish I would have played in its heyday, but I at least got to it soon enough to where I could still appreciate quite a bit about what it delivered. And on my ranking of the 14, I have it at 7. So right there in the middle. Charles, will go over to you.
Yeah, for everything you said, just thankfully a sequel to a game that was just awesome. Again, first day, whatever, give it to me. I remember that was one of the first that they switched the PlayStation case from, and as a collector, that just frustrates the fuck out of me. Because they used to be big and plastic and whatever. That's neither here nor there.
Case. Yeah.
yeah. They switched to a regular CD case. But I remember my first thought going, yes, the police station is gorgeous. Thinking, well, it's a police station. This must be stacked with ammo because this has got to be easy.
You walk into a room that's stacked with ammo, you're about to get your fucking ass reamed.
Yeah, and the lead into it was pretty bad, even for the time. The just walking in the streets with just absolute chaos going on, and like, you started to become invested in the little universe there, the Raccoon City, the Umbrella universe, and what the fuck's Wesker going to be doing this time? And it was just an extension. You're not just in a house, you're in a city, but you still have that pseudo trapped feeling. And they added new elements, new what did you call it, a bullet cushion?
Bullet sponge enemies.
Bullet sponge. Yeah.
Certainly in the remake games, it's like, how many fucking bullets does this bitch take?
Yeah. And that was like, I was relieved, like a police station, there's gonna be a stock room or something where I'll be able to take care of business, but no. No. And that's as we get closer to the like 2000s, I think Code Veronica kind of brought me back around, but 2 I played a lot, not nearly as much as I did 1, and 3 was quick, and I didn't play that nearly as much, but it doesn't take away from the fact that it was, as far as I'm concerned, 2 was great. Not as good as the first one, but there was more to do. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, a little bit. Where's this on your ranking?
Right above 1. That's 9.
You just said it's not as good as 1.
There's more to do.
Okay, fair enough.
You have to keep in mind that
Fair
they, they redid both. Well,
yeah,
4 of them now. So
that's what makes it difficult to rank these, because you're like, but I'm not going to play the old ones ever again. And so,
right.
Rudy, so what is your experience with 2? And if you can, let me know which game do you think had better puzzles, because that's something that I don't remember too much about the older games, is the puzzle mechanics.
Okay, let me think about that for a little bit. But 2, the memories are very fond because this was my first video game that felt like an event, because RE1 was such a surprise and no one saw it coming. Then word of mouth happened, and then now you had a George Romero commercial filmed for part 2, and then the hype was just really big, similar to like Metal Gear Solid 2. So I remember taking the day off from work, having to pre-order it at Toys R Us. And when I bought it, my girlfriend at the time, my ex-wife, it was her and my cousins all playing it in my room because it was such a big deal. And it felt big because the first game was just at a location, a home. Now you had the city was infected. So there was a lot of video game magazines that were comparing it to Dawn of the Dead, especially that one picture, that one scene where the hands are coming through the window. And they were showing this screenshot of the one scene in that one hallway with RE2. And so we all saw Dawn of the Dead the night before, just to kind of get in that mood. So it was a much bigger game. And the A and B scenarios, again, replayability. You possibly had 4 different endings, I think. If you you can leave weapons, you can leave items for the next person. And it was just big. And again, not as scary, because I just felt I had more ammo and there was more people around me that I can talk to. There's nothing more terrifying, in my opinion, than just being alone somewhere in a game. If you can communicate with somebody via comms, or you can run into this guy occasionally, it's cool. But when you're alone, it's more terrifying, in my opinion, because you can't get help and you can't hope for a cutscene to come save you, right? Because you're just fucking on your own.
I can hope.
Right? Yes, you can. Of course you can save me. But it was awesome, and I absolutely loved it. And again, I think the cultural impact it's had. Think about it. We're still talking about it to this day, almost 20-something years later. And for that, it's my number 3.
Awesome. No, this is the one, if I remember correctly, we were talking about the door animations earlier. This is the one that had that scene where you went through a door, and all of a sudden the zombies came through and caught you off guard, right?
Yes, that's terrible, because that was our time to put our controller down and get a drink of Big
Red. Yeah, like, oh, fuck.
What the fuck? It terrified the hell out of us, man. So that was the one game. Yep.
Awesome.
It, man.
Do you remember which one had better puzzles, or if they were pretty close?
I like Nemesis puzzles better in part 3.
Okay, Nemesis. All right. Well, we'll get there in a second.
Harder puzzles, man.
Gotcha. Let me catch up on these super chats. We got Zach Hedrick. Ever played the Mafia series, specifically Mafia 2? I have played all 3 of them. I've beaten the first 2 and platinum the second one. The third one I lost interest in pretty quickly. You guys?
I've never played them. I hear they're great though.
Yeah, isn't the third one where it takes place like in the Louisiana 70s or something like that?
Yeah.
I was going through a divorce at the time, and I was just like, I don't.
In other words, no. Gavin Moon, talk about perfect timing. I literally started playing the RE games for the first time just a couple of days ago. Hopefully, you guys aren't so upset with me for starting with Biohazard. No, actually, I think that Resident Evil 7 and 8 are a pretty good place to start, because they're modern, obviously, so they're easy to get into, but they're pretty removed from the main Resident Evil timeline. Like, there's a few little parallels, there's a few little ties, but it's not like you're going to be lost playing them. It's almost a completely different character, different enemies and everything. So not a bad place to start.
The look of it pretty much picks up where PT just decided to fuck off.
Exactly. Konami, Capcom saw Konami shit in the bed, and they were like, let's just take that shit real quick and go. I got an idea.
I want to close real quick. In RE2, the original RE2 is, in my opinion, the last of the RE games that had survival horror.
Okay.
After that, it got more like action based, and we'll talk about that later.
Okay. One other comment that I like: do you guys want them to remake the original Resident Evil in the style of RE2, 3, and 4? I've been asked that question a lot here lately: is what game do they need to remake next? And it seems like the logical answer is they're going to just go ahead and do RE5. I think that would be stupid because if you're only playing these modern games, you don't know who the fuck Chris, Jill, or Wesker is. And so to me, that would be a mistake. I want them to go back and remake the original Resident Evil with this new Resident Evil engine, then do Code Veronica, and then close that trilogy out with 5, because those 3 games are connected the same way 2, 3, and 4 are. I don't know if they're going to do that, but I would be disappointed if they announced that they're going to just jump right to RE5, because there's a lot of really good stuff that they're missing. So yes, absolutely. You guys?
I think Code Veronica seems like the obvious the next choice, because like you said, it's connected. But yeah, anytime you ask me to redo one with modern graphics and all that shit, yeah, I'd like to see them somehow intertwine 1 and 2, where you think you're done with part 1 and you just leave the mansion and now you're in the city, and guess what? Part 2 starts, and like an not open world like GTA style, but like just, I mean, we have discs that can, well, I mean, shit, you could download the thing and it takes up a quarter of your hard drive at this point. So that they have the space to cover that much. Fuck it, just make a Resident Evil world.
Yeah, I would want the original remade in today's graphics, but you know what? I would want it instead of it looking like 2 and 4. I would want it to have the same look and feel as the old one did. I want like still images, not pre-rendered backgrounds, but I want the look and aesthetic to be present. I want it to feel different from part 4 and 3. Okay. I don't want that over-the-shoulder perspective. I want that atmospheric horror tension game again.
So you want modern graphics, but you want the tank controls back?
No. I want. I'm gonna hold off right now, and I'll get into more detail when I talk about the RE1 remake.
Alrighty. Let's see. I think we had one more. Oh, a couple
3
more. OG Nemesis from 99, near and dear to my heart. Well, we're right about to talk about that one. Thomas James, thank you so much, and Sean Sheridan, thank you so much. How many legacy characters do you want to see return for Resident Evil 9? Well, if the rumors are true that Resident Evil 9 is going to be like their last mainline game, I would want all of the main characters to show up at some point. I think that would be a good way to wrap it all up. Moving on, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, which was released in 1999, just a year later, also on the PlayStation 1. And I have very vivid memories of seeing this CD case cover, but never was inclined to play it for some stupid ass fucking reason. But I have a pretty funny story in regards to my first time playing Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, and it's going to show what a selfish little prick I was as a kid. So
as a kid,
yeah, I know, right? I know. So this was after I had already been introduced to the Resident Evil franchise, and I was hungry for other Resident Evil games. And so I found out that they had Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3 also like ported onto GameCube. And so at some point I was trying to think like, okay, I don't have any money. I don't make any money. How can I get these fucking games? And it was my brother's birthday just around the corner. And he used to play a lot of my video games and play with me or whatever. So I got my dad's ear and I said, Dad, I got a good idea for Dylan's birthday. He really likes watching me play this Resident Evil game. There's 2 you can get. They're like $20 a piece. Why don't you get those? All right, yeah, good idea, son. Good idea. So my dad buys Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 on GameCube for my brother. It gets worse. It gets worse. So at the time of my brother's birthday, my cousin who lived in Michigan, we were living in Savannah at the time, was visiting. He was staying with me for about 2 weeks, and I had just got him hooked onto the Resident Evil game that I was playing, and now he's hungry too. And I was like, yeah, Dylan's birthday, we're going to be able to play 2 and 3. And that felt like an eternity to me. And so while my dad was at work, I went into where I knew he was hiding the presents. I opened up my brother's game, and me and my cousin played Resident Evil 3 like nonstop for the next 2 days, and then I put it back in its case and put it back. So and then I was the one who always wrapped the present, so I wrapped it before anybody realized the cellophane was gone.
Shit move, man.
Starts the game. Do you want to pick up where you left off?
It gets worse. It gets worse.
Oh my god.
So after my brother opens it up, my dad just happens to be looming over him and notices that there's no cellophane and immediately knows what the fuck happened. And he goes, "Did you open and play the fucking game? It wasn't even his birthday." And I was like, no, I didn't. It just came that way. I promise. So yeah. Anyway,
wow.
Game was pretty fucking awesome. So I got really.
How did your brother like it, Cody?
I don't know if he ever played it, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember, to be honest, but no, yeah. So Resident Evil 3 Nemesis was the first game that I played from the classic games. I don't know why I went backwards, but something about that Nemesis character, I was like, I want to play this one. And I liked how fast paced it was because it was going back to the old school tank controls, which I hadn't played since Silent Hill. So it took a little getting used to. It was a very different game than the one that introduced me to the franchise, but I liked how fast paced it was. I liked how the Nemesis character, his appearance, you would have like a choice to run or to fight. And I never really knew what that meant. I was like, what does this mean? Like, if I run, am I going to get fucked up twice as bad later? If I decide to fight now, am I going to be without ammo for the next 2 hours? Like, what's going to happen? And so there was a lot of tension involved with those choices. And I never played it a second time to be able to see like what the alternate versions of those choices would bring. But I like Jill as a character. I liked seeing kind of the city landscape, but it was like after it's already been just fucking demolished. And
it was before part 2. It was like a
correct.
prequel in a sense, yeah.
It was like kind of running along the same lines. It was like the same timeline. But I had a really good time with it. It was a game that I played it and I would get exhausted with the old school gameplay and then I'd put it away for a while. And then I would like an addict, I would be drawn back to it. And we just kept putting it in until we beat it. So I had pretty fond memories of this original Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. I was very excited when they announced a remake because I had fond memories of it. And it is just above the original for me at number 10 on my ranking. To you, Rudy. Give us a better moral compass of a story than what I introduced it with.
Deceptive shitbag over here.
I know, man. God, covering up his tracks. I mean, never to piss you off. Anyway, I was on break. I worked at the mall, and I was on break, and I went to EB Games. Remember EB Games?
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Electronic Boutique. It was called Electronic
GameStop bought them all out. So that's what GameStop was before.
And the manager knew I like Resident Evil games, and I walked in. Like, hey, you got anything new? He said, hey, you don't know about Nemesis? I'm like, what? I had no idea about part 3 because it came out like less than a year or about a year after part 2. There were no commercials. There was no hype. And I guess I missed that article in, Electronic Gamers Monthly, but I go, shit, I'll take it. So I looked in the back and I saw the Nemesis and I read all about it. I went home and I remember it being different. I had more ammo. I remember there's this one part where Jill had a machine gun and she's just like tearing down all these monsters. And one thing I do love about it and that you already mentioned was the innovative choice. What you want to do. And there's a heart, boom, 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 boom. The music and the tension. You want to fight him or do you want to run inside? I'm like, I'm going inside. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm not going to fight him. So the choice was there. I remember not being scared about saving or running out of ammo like the other games. So that was the first experience. And I remember the puzzles were way more challenging. I remember there's this water puzzle that's notoriously famous for being super hard to solve. And I remember that one really, I couldn't solve it. I had to go get the book on my break and look for the solution. Because you couldn't go on the internet back then, so you had to get the book.
GameWinners.com and GameFacts.com used to be like my Bible back in the day. I'm like, fuck this shit. And just go get on the computer, wait for the dial-up, and then figure out the answer.
Yeah, Jason right there, he says EB Games at River Center Mall. That's the exact EB Games I bought it from. So I guess he's from San Antonio. That's crazy. So so I remember it being fun, and I was never scared of Mr. X because he would walk to you and you can hear his footsteps. But Nemesis terrified me for the simple fact he would run. He'd jump out of walls out of nowhere, and the fucker had a rocket launcher. So it just added way more tension to the gameplay, and I liked it. Again, I liked the fact that you got to be in the world with Jill before things went to shits, and you got to see just a different point of view of Raccoon City before it's nuked at the end. So I enjoyed it, and it's at my number 10 slot.
Okay. Charles?
For the opposite reason that I thought 2 was fun. I mean, it's like both of you have said, it is very similar to 2. I do remember it being released very, very close to 2, and that's abnormal, especially for that time.
Really fast.
Yeah, games took forever back then. I felt like it was short, and that was something that was
definitely shorter. Yeah, it's definitely shorter.
Really?
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a bit of a detriment, and only because
also you don't have the alternate different characters and the
Right.
scenario A and
Right.
B.
So it was good, but I was slowly becoming into other things, and I think I was hitting puberty at this point. So
I don't have time for video games.
yeah,
I'm looking
I
for
was, I was too
blowjobs.
cool for games. This game's too short, so fuck this.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's 11 out of 14 on my list.
Okay.
And the
So you've
remake,
got Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, like
yeah,
back to back. Okay.
and I'll explain why. In their remakes, they fixed things and made things way better.
Okay.
But nostalgia is like, if we're grading nostalgia, that first one, I can't. There's no. I mean, shit. Judging last night's little train incident, like that's like
I don't
top
know how the
5.
fuck you survived a Resident Evil game, to be honest with you. Watching me play The Last of Us, like brushing my teeth with my left hand. Get the shiv. Don't use it on the regular guy. You use it on the regular guy. Restart and get the shiv again. Fuck, you gotta wait 30 seconds for him to see this.
I've always had a wingman or something in. Yeah, we'll get to that later too.
Oh Lord. All right. So moving on to the Dreamcast era. Resident Evil Code Veronica came out in 2000. It was also re-released later on to the PlayStation 2, I believe, as Code Veronica X. That's how I first played it, which I'll get into. And Rudy, I'm going to defer to you on this one because I know that this is a big favorite for you.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites, and again, I would love to see this remade. You had to buy a Dreamcast. I'm sorry, you had to buy a Dreamcast to play it, and that's what pissed me off because I was always loyal to PlayStation.
Mhm.
And when I found out that you had to get a Dreamcast, I'm like, fuck. All right, so I bought a Dreamcast just to play that game, and it was I can't tell you. We've all had those moments when you go to the next gen console and you put in a game and you're like, wow, the graphics have really just it made a huge leap. That I had that moment when I saw the intro, the John Woo style intro with Claire Redfield and the whole gun sequence and her way the eye moved when she was in jail. It felt I read some articles. I don't know if this is true or not, but I'd heard this was supposed to be the original part 3.
Yes.
Yeah. So it felt like a part 3 in my opinion. But wow, this feels like a natural sequel compared to Nemesis. I remember the graphics. We didn't have any more pre-rendered backgrounds. It was all like animated with, and he had some camera control, but the tank controls are still there. I found it not as terrifying because again we're going with more action based. I didn't like the character Steve. I thought he was annoying. The original Dreamcast version, he looked like Leo DiCaprio. I think they were trying
not by accident
to look like Titanic, because he was a big deal back then. But I remember it feeling like the longest RE game I've ever played. Because just when you think you're about to beat it, there's that whole airplane sequence with the tyrants on the plane, kind of like Aliens. You crash and you get some more. Now you're in Antarctica. Like, what the hell? And then you think the game's over. Then Chris Redfield shows up. Like, holy shit. I didn't know any of this. So it felt like a very long
Her
game.
name is Claire Redfield.
Yeah. So
oh my God, they're related?
It felt like the biggest Resident Evil game we had up until that time. From an innovation standpoint, graphic standpoint, it was the best. And the story was stellar. We had Wesker come back again. He was a little bit more Matrixy now because, again, the Matrix was a big thing back then. And his character with the red eyes and him evolving started going kind of like a crazy, like a little far-fetched. But I have very fond memories of it. Again, it's just an amazing experience playing a game on a new console. And I loved it. And I have Code Veronica at 9.
Oh, wow. Okay.
9.
Charles.
Yeah, I enjoyed the advancement and Dreamcast. And man, I spent my paycheck on the stupidest shit. I remember their ad campaign, $9.99. Fucking September 9th, 1999, Dreamcast came out. I spent money that probably should have gone towards my car.
Dreamcast is actually the only game system that came out after the only significant game system that came out after the original Nintendo that I never owned.
Oh no, shit!
It's amazing, dude. If I can find it, I would buy it again.
Yeah,
I love it.
What killed it was so easy to
bootleg
copy games. Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, so fortunately for cheapos like me, but unfortunately, it ended up being the death of that system.
The birth of the uncle.
Yeah, yeah. Like I remember a friend brought over like a CD book, and I'm like, "What the fuck? What are CDRs? What are all this shit?" And he'd throw it on, and sure enough, oh, you have a full game on a CD. Okay, never mind. The thing I enjoyed about Code Veronica, it was like the 3-year later update of the original, and the mansion was fucking badass. And even for the short time frame, the updated graphics and everything, it was just like, oh, yes, this is like I had that nostalgia pang again, and everything about the creepy twins. It was like the original, but it wasn't. That there was enough new stuff in it that made it feel new. And of course, like Rudy said, it was longer, and I
Yeah.
have it at 6, and I would like a remake.
Can I add one more thing, Cody? I forgot to mention it.
Yeah.
The Sega Dreamcast controller had this weird type of memory card called a UMB. It looked like a mini GameCube, a Game Boy. I'm sorry. And I remember being like, "Wow, we're now in the future," because you would put this this memory card in the controller, but it had a digital interface. And when you're playing Resident Evil Code Veronica, you're fine, your caution, your health was beeping on the screen. And I'm like, that's fucking awesome, you know, because now we get to see the game in the controller. So it was cool, and your heart will beat faster when you're like in the caution red. So that was a cool, innovative tool that had not been done before. It was a first at the time.
That was the age of the Tamagotchi too, where they thought they were going to be able to really kill two birds with one stone with those memory things with a screen.
Good times.
Yeah, the controller was just way too big though. It was just like you
actually loved it. The one that I couldn't adjust to was a 64. I'm like, what are all these fucking knobs and shit? Like, felt like
that's
that
a weird
toy
one.
Puppet.
Yeah.
I hated it, man.
So Code Veronica is another one of those games that, unfortunately, the time that I was finally played it kind of screwed it over a little bit. I desperately want a remake of this game because there's so many things in it, from the story to the character progression from the first and second game to the setting and some of the boss battles. Like Nosferatu was a really cool one where I remember walking over the grate and they show this little cutscene of this fucking dude with stitched eyes down there, and I was like, oh fuck, I'm gonna have to fight that at some point. All right. And then whenever I get to a point you could hear something breaking out, I'm like, oh fuck, it's time. So I played this for the first time maybe it was when Resident Evil 3 Remake came out that year, so 2020. So basically what happened was Resident Evil 3 Remake came out. I did a ranking video of all the mainline Resident Evil games, so just the ones with numbers. And I had everybody and their mother going, you fucking idiot. You didn't include Code Veronica. You didn't include Revelations 1 and 2. Those are mainline games. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. And I was like, fine. And so I bought Resident Evil 0, Revelations 1 and 2, and Code Veronica. And Code Veronica was the only one that wasn't like a modernized version. It was just a port of the PlayStation 2 over onto PlayStation 4. And so it was rough to get used to those tank controls again. And my God, did this game have a serious scarcity on herbs. I remember so many points where I was just like, oh, I'm fucked, because it would be like a whole hour of gameplay with no herbs. The tyrant on the plane, I had no herbs, and so I had to figure out a way to beat him through trial and error without getting hit once. The Bandersnatches, as soon as those came out and that big fucking arm came, like I would have to like figure out like the quick little path to juke around him, like go through the door, whoosh, let the arm go, run. Like there was so many points where I had to just figure out how to not get hit because there was no fucking health. So I had a rough time with it, but story-wise, gameplay, and character-wise, I could see why this is a big fan favorite and kind of a forgotten favorite, and I genuinely hope that they remake it. But as it stands right now, it's my number 12. So
real quick, I forgot to mention, I don't know if anybody had the same problem, but there was this one point in the game that you had a fire extinguisher. And it was like, why do I need a fire extinguisher? And I remember leaving it, like I discarded it. And then I got like somewhere in the middle of the game where there was a fire and you couldn't pass it. And I'm like, fuck, the fire extinguisher, I need that. and I had dropped it at a level of the game where I couldn't go back, so I had to start all over again and keep the fire extinguisher in my storage. So
that
it was
sucks.
I'll never forget that. Like, wow.
You shouldn't
But
have been able
also,
to do that. That's that old school
Yeah.
bullshit. Where it's like, why'd you let me fucking drop it? I shouldn't even have that option.
yeah, and there's also a lot of similarities with Code Veronica and 4. I thought 4 took a lot of inspiration from Code Veronica.
Okay.
Tons of it.
I just realized that
The
4 felt like
mansion,
more
the
like a
location.
ground up kind of deal.
I
Yeah.
would agree. But I don't have a whole lot of experience with Code Veronica. One super chat. Chris Kelly says his first super chat too. Thank you, sir. Huge fan of the content you guys make. What input do you guys have on what the best Resident Evil save room theme and alternate costume is? Thank you. I mean, I'm not going to spoil, and most people know, but I'm not going to spoil what my number one game is, but pretty much any music cue from that game really hits me in the nostalgic feels. But as far as alternate costumes, I really liked the one that we got in this most recent Resident Evil remake that kind of made you look like Dante from Devil May Cry. It was
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
the evil one or whatever. You get the red eyes and the fucking white hair and shit. That was a pretty cool one. A lot of them are goofy. They go more the goofy route with the collectibles than they do cool most times. Like even in that Resident Evil remake, I was kind of pissed that all the ones that you're trying to unlock was like fucking deer antlers and cat ears and all this weird shit. I'm like, that's that Japanese anime stuff that I don't like. Like, give me some fucking cool sunshades or something that give me unlimited ammo. But I don't know if you guys have a different answer for save room theme or favorite alternate costume.
Yeah, but the save room theme, believe it or not, when I was remember, everybody knows like I play movie scores to help me concentrate when I'm working because of my ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
It all started with the Resident Evil remake save room music. That was my first. I would have that playing for hours, and there's like an 8-hour video somewhere on YouTube that I would play, and that song got me through some dark times, believe it or not, but it actually helped me.
So whatever content creator holds that channel, most of your AdSense that down there.
Yeah, you didn't get copyrighted. Yeah, so
Yeah.
but I love, that's my favorite theme. Sorry.
Okay, alternate costume.
I can't think of one.
CP.
Yeah,
maybe I don't know.
I'm having a hard time.
Lady D, like in a corset. That's a mod.
Yeah,
Resident Evil
hey, that's mine,
Village.
right?
There you go.
yeah, I have a little bit of a
Yeah,
dated
ADT.
pre-Gamergate opinion, but what was one where like Jill wore some not on the town type shit as an alternate outfit? Maybe it wasn't Jill, maybe it was Veronica, Claire. I don't remember which one it was, but there was one where one of the female characters was not dressed to be fighting zombies, that's for sure. And I was like, that's hot.
Oh Lord, I don't remember that one.
It's so foggy. I'm not somebody that completes games and
You don't say.
I unlock special
I got
stupid
30
medals.
hours in. I'm in chapter 2.
Achievement unlocked.
Yeah.
Play chicken with a train.
There you go. Oh man. All right, moving on from there, we have the GameCube release of the Resident Evil remake. And I didn't even realize that this and Resident Evil 0 came out before Resident Evil 4. I was enlightened to that today when I was researching dates. So this was the first version of Resident Evil that I ever played. This was the very next thing that I played after I got introduced to Resident Evil was this. I was walking through, I believe it was either Best Buy or no, it had to have been Best Buy. I was walking around. I remember I was just kind of trailing through the GameCube section. And I was one of those guys that GameCube never really appealed to me much. I always thought it was weird that Resident Evil was suddenly housed on GameCube. And I remember I passed Resident Evil and I was like, holy fuck, they had the first one on GameCube. And I pulled around and it looked all modern and shit. And I was like, oh my God. And I think I just had enough money to negotiate through my dad. Like, I got $20. If you just give me the other 10, I'll be so happy. So I took that home.
It's for my brother.
Yeah, exactly. Dylan really wants to play this. I'll give you 20. And I remember playing the shit out of this game. And this is one that I actually would love playing speed runs through, where I would just kind of be bored one Saturday or Sunday. And I just like, oh, fuck it. I'll put this on just for a little bit. And a little bit would turn into, oh, I'm just going to beat the whole game in one sitting. So I love the way that they modernized it. I love the way they updated the graphics. I think that the way that they did, they got rid of all the old cheesier voice acting and redid all of that, made it a little bit more modern. There's still some hints of it in there for nostalgic purposes, but one of the biggest additions to this game that it kind of pissed me off whenever I went back and played the original and found out that it was exclusive to this version was Lisa Trevor. Because Lisa Trevor is to this day one of the scariest Resident Evil monsters, and just the sound that she would make with the chains, and you get the little story through the different little collectibles, and even the boss battle is very unique, and it's just such a great version of the game. Like, if you're gonna play the old school tank control version of Resident Evil, I would say that's the best one to play if you're gonna play today. And if they have ported it over to the PlayStation, I think it was out on PS4. You can play it on PS5, and that's a really good version as well. It's just
didn't they touch it up slightly for the
yeah.
Again,
it looks good. Yeah, it looks good. So really, the only thing that's dated about it is the tank controls, but it's the best version of a tank control game. Also, the Crimson Heads. What the fuck? I remember the first time that bitch stood up, man. I shit myself. Like, you have and I don't think those were in the original game either, if I'm not mistaken.
It was not.
So
That's
no, they're like a hybrid of the liquor, aren't they? Or
no, it was just
not the liquor.
If you kill a zombie and you don't burn the body, then there's the chance that it comes back to life, and it's like super ferocious. I remember walking past one, and it was like, and I was like, what the fuck? And then you try to run, and those shitty controls, and you're trying to move this way, and
I'm thinking of a hunter.
And you needed the lighter and kerosene.
Yeah,
you didn't have that.
You had to manage those in your inventory, just like the ribbons and your ammo. You're like, okay, do I want to burn this fucking thing, or do I want to save it in case there's a room of 3 of them that I need to get rid of? So yeah, I think that this was a fucking fantastic game. I loved playing it. I still like playing it. I'm actually kind of getting the itch to here lately to play it again, because I haven't played the tank control versions of these games in quite a while, and it is my number 6, pretty high up there for me. Charles.
Yeah, so if this counts as the PS4, whatever, this is just the one that they've touched up every couple of years.
Yeah, so I think they touched it up for PS3, ported it to 4, and then you port it over to 5 too, or you download the PS4 version at least.
Yeah, I know I have it on my hard drive on my Xbox. So this is my number 1 because it takes my nostalgia. And it says, hey, how about some modern graphics and a full 3D environment?
Number 1? Is that what you said?
I said it. I said it, motherfucker.
I'm not complaining, dude. That's like, hey, that's badass.
They took a game that I had so many fond memories of and added to it. And like behind the stairs, there's that thing you needed a key for. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is just a regular pathway before, and then there was another door on the other side that went to like the yard, and I was like, oh, we're getting more shit here.
That's the piece of the experience that I wish I would have had, is playing the new one and seeing what was different.
Yeah, it took something that like it just there's that one room where it's like a L-shaped stairway that you have a save room in the I don't know, there's a hanging light, and there's an L-shaped staircase going down to where there's a save room. And I remember that the light would just kind of slightly swing, and the way the lighting was, I was like, oh my God, this is fucking incredible. Just something stupid like that. The shadow effect on a light. It just took something that I already really, really loved and modernized it and added to it. And it just, chef's kiss. Fucking A.
There you go. T.O. Rudy, your turn.
I'm gonna be a little. This take may get some hate, all right, but this is
motherfucker.
This is the best remake in all the entire RE catalog that's ever been made.
I might
including 4, the one that just came out, including 4, because not only did this, as you touched on, introduced the Crimson Heads into the fold, but it also introduced the defense where you can throw like a grenade in their mouth, or the dagger, which is now being used to this day. That wasn't an option in the original game, and I've said this, and I know you both are going to give me the look that I can feel your look already. But this game, artistically, it looks like a painting. It's beautiful, and if they, to answer your question from earlier, Cody, if they ever did the RE1 remake, I want it to look aesthetically like this. because as CP said, there's sequences where you're walking, there's like a flash of lightning. It's fucking beautiful, man. I think this game looks better than a lot of PS5 games to this day because you can see the detail that went into it, man. I love that. And even the animations on their faces look somewhat better than some PS5 games. And I said in one of my reviews, it looks like if Zack Snyder remade a video game, this is how it would
we get
look.
Zack Snyder in here.
That's my point. Because I think about 300, all of his films have an aesthetic feel. You know you're watching a Zack Snyder film, so this game feels different from anything else.
I'm going to need you to find another director that has a distinct style that you can throw. It's like you're watching a Nolan film. You know you're watching a Nolan film.
I knew I was going to get that reaction.
Snyderfy everything.
But in my opinion, it's the best. And it's actually terrifying. I remember playing it when the GameCube, I had to buy a GameCube because, again, this was a GameCube exclusive. And I was scared to play it. I remember my friend who had never played the games before. I was telling him, dude, you have to get it. You have to get it. And we're watching the beginning sequence, and I was expecting that horrible acting and voice acting that I had seen in the original. But no, the opening sequence for the remake was actually scary. He's like, dude, this is fucking scary. Dude. I'm like, oh my God. So it was a wonderful experience, and I actually have it as my number 2.
Awesome. I was so obsessed with this game at the time. I was introduced to Resident Evil 4, and all of a sudden I was like, fucking give me all of it, everything that I've missed now. And I was so obsessed with this game. I remember sitting in, I think I was, I was 15, I believe, by the time I got introduced to the series. So I was sitting in like a math class, like maybe algebra or some shit when I was in 10th grade. And I was actually like, when I was bored and there was nothing going on, I had a little notebook and I was writing out my own like novelization version of the first Resident Evil game.
Really?
I took it that hard. Yeah. Just going by memory, like what happened in the opening cutscene. The dogs ran and like the dead came back, and I was writing it. I got to like where the zombie turned around, and then I think I just gave up. But yep, I did that. All right. Moving on to Resident Evil 0, which also came out the same year, apparently, for GameCube, had the same aesthetic and everything from the Resident Evil remake. I don't remember which one came out first, because like I said, I kind of had gotten enlightened to the fact that it came out before 4. Either you remember?
It came out second. It was a remake and then this.
They redid the everything about it. So they said, fuck it, let's redo one. If I recall correctly, because they were doing a new setup for the fuck, I don't know. Never mind. I'll bail. I crash into trains. What do you want from me?
Where's my phone? Where's it at?
I just remember reading something where they're like, well, since they're making this brand new thing, they're gonna take the same look and feel and
create another game.
It. Yeah.
So this was one that I got introduced to the same time that I got introduced to Code Veronica. This was the last of those games that I played before my re-ranking. And I'll give this to Resident Evil 0. Like, I love the look of it because it has the same look, the same aesthetic, the same engine as the Resident Evil remake. It was cool to get to know 2 new characters who weren't like the core people. You know, we had Rebecca in a little sneeze of Chris's campaign in the remake, and so this was now her story with this other guy, Billy, I believe, who's like an escaped convict or some shit. So I liked their character dynamic a bit. Yeah, but everything else about the game I did not like. This is one of my least favorites for a couple of reasons. Number one, I'm really traditionally not a big fan of prequels because more times than not, they're answering questions that I'm not asking, and the answers they're giving I don't like. And so I don't like the fact that all of the badassery of the Spencer Mansion and the original Resident Evil game, now canonically, it's like, oh yeah, all that came from slugs. No, thank you. No, they don't. I also didn't like the fact, you know, I always found William Birkin to be a bit of a tragic villain in the second game, to where, you know, he had to inject himself because they fucked him over and shot him, was going to take his life's work and everything like that. And this game canonically makes him just as fucked up and evil as Wesker, because there's, you know, cutscenes with them together where they're like, whoa, and they're doing all the evil stuff. And I don't like that version of William Birkin. I like having him be more the tragic figure that had to become this monster, not somebody who was always an asshole. So I didn't like that. They also introduced this thing into the gameplay for your item management to where rather than having the little store boxes, you would have to just carry it between the two characters and you would have to switch perspective with a button. It was unique, but I didn't like it. And it was just kind of a pain in the ass. So it was fine. I enjoyed playing the game just fine. It was enough. By that point, I had already kind of gotten my bearings with the tank controls, and it was certainly easier to go from Code Veronica to this than vice versa. But it's not a game that I enjoyed all that much, and it's not one that I really have the desire to replay. This is actually my number 13.
Hey, Jinx.
Jinx? Okay, we'll go ahead then.
My the 13 as well. It's just something that it was too close to the one remake, and it's one of the ones that I really didn't play for very long. I maybe put 3 hours into it. I never bought it. That's another sign that I just really wasn't into it. Back in the time, Blockbuster used to rent games, and that's how I tried it first. And played it a couple hours. I think I brought it back. Usually I wouldn't mind paying the late fee for an extra day or two or whatever. Brought it back on time, and I was like, no, I'm all set.
Let me interject really quick because I forgot to tell this story whenever we were on Code Veronica. I actually played Code Veronica X way back in the day. I rented it from Family Video, which was like my Blockbuster up in Ohio. And I rented the game, brought it home. I probably played it for 15, 20 minutes, and then I took it back and returned it. Because when I was young, I absolutely had this mentality when I was playing video games. So forgive me, but I was playing it and I was like, I gotta be a fucking girl? No. And I returned it.
Oh, God.
Not that way anymore. It's not that way anymore. I love my female video game characters. But no, yeah, that was absolutely what happened. I was like, I gotta be a fucking girl? Nah. And I took it back. And so carry on. You said Blockbuster and that triggered that memory. I was like, oh yeah, I was gonna bring that up.
Gamergate fucker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Is it my turn or CB's turn?
Go ahead, guy. We're 0. That's about. It's 13 for me, and it's a 0 in my book.
And there's 14 games on our list, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I'll just say it's my 13th as well.
Wow.
Wow. No love for 0 on this panel.
This is the only Resident Evil game that no, this is the second Resident Evil game that I never replayed after I beat it. I'm like, I have no joy in going back and experiencing this. It started off promising with the train sequence. I love that.
Yes.
I was like, oh, this is awesome, and then when Opera Man showed up, I don't know his name, but the guy, I just called him Opera Man, like Adam Sandler. It was like, this is a villain, really? He sings and slugs are like swimming and dancing. Like, this is so stupid.
I hated that. I hated it so much.
I knew. But I wasn't really vested into it. I do like the mechanics, as you said. It's a huge learning curve. I mean, in my opinion, it's tougher than you have the tank controls, and then you had to switch characters and sometimes leave them in another room and then go to the other room, run through that sequence, and then switch and have the same character do the same thing. It was very hard. The inventory list, I think they can hold up 6. They had 6 slots. And instead of the storage place, you just discarded it and you put it on the ground, and there it was, just shining on the ground. And you can pick it up anytime you want it. So it was innovative, and I give it, some praise for how it looks, because it looks just like the remake that we just talked about. But I wasn't impressed with the villains, because it was a giant spider, not just spider, it was a giant scorpion, a giant millipede, and a big cat. I'm like, where are the zombies? We're fighting animals. Yeah, is what we're doing. I mean, this is not Resident Evil, so I wasn't too vested into it. And again, it's my number 13.
There you go. Yeah, not a big fan of Resident Evil 0 on this panel. Sorry, fans.
And it has its fans too. There's people that are.
Oh, it does. It does. Yeah. Trust me. I met them when I didn't include it in the fucking ranking. They're like, "How dare you!" And then I added it, and I'm like, "It's the last one, so how dare me again?"
Yeah, everybody has nostalgia for the same, like
it's like the curse of Michael Myers fans. It's like,
Paul Rudd is brilliant, so nuanced with the craziness. All right, moving on to the gold standard, baby. Resident Evil 4 released in 2005, straight to the GameCube, and this is the one that started it all for me. I remember it was never a program that I watched all that religiously, but I would pop it on once in a while back when G4 was its own TV channel.
Yeah.
And they were covering this game a lot, and I kept seeing gameplay videos for it, and I was like, it looks kind of cool. But, remember, at this point, I had never played a Resident Evil game before, aside from the 15 minutes of Code Veronica, and I was like, out of here. So I remember we were at no, it wasn't Family Video. It was Video Warehouse, which eventually became my first job when I was 15. And so before I actually worked there, remember we went there one night just to kind of fuck around, see what they had, and they had Resident Evil 4. And so I rented it, just like, whatever, I'll try this new game. And my God, dude, you want to talk about a shot of fucking crack cocaine? I was just like, that's not even in a needle. A sniff of crack cocaine.
How do you know?
Yeah. There you go. That tells you I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about when it comes to illegal drugs. Nonetheless, I was so mesmerized and addicted to this fucking thing. I was like, this is the coolest fucking thing I've ever played in my life. And so I played the shit out of it, eventually bought it, and this to date is the video game that I have played and completed the most in my life. It's my second favorite video game of all time, just behind Metal Gear Solid, the original, and just in front of Last of Us. And I loved the campiness. I loved the characters. I loved the boss battles. I loved the way that it's a much longer Resident Evil game. There's like a lot more to do. Of course, when you speed run it, it seems much shorter in retrospect, but having the village scenario, and then you get into that old Gothic castle, and then eventually that fucked up island prison type place. There was like nothing about this game that I didn't love. I loved how it was creepy as hell, but it also had so much action to it. And I loved going through and just beating it over and over again and getting these unlockables and getting the Chicago typewriter and getting the unlimited ammo rocket launcher. And then you got addicted to the mercenaries mode, and you had to get like S+ on all of those to get the hand cannon. And I played and completed every single tiny little thing that ever came out for this. All the Ada missions. I think that was eventually later on the PS2 one, if I'm not mistaken. But nonetheless, I was an absolute addict with this thing, and it turned me into a Resident Evil whore immediately. And so immediately I was like kicking myself in the ass. Well, I never played the others. I was hungry, trying to find whatever I could. I was manipulating my dad to buy shit for my little brother. I was seriously like, I was on the street. Like, you got any more Resident Evils anymore?
I got these cheeseburgers, man.
Yeah.
What? Right?
Exactly.
I'll suck your dick, man.
Yeah. I mean, Mendez, I thought was just an incredible first boss fight whenever he's, got that flaming little barn, and then he turns into that like centipede looking thing. And then eventually he's swinging around. I absolutely adore this game. So it's my number one. I debated between this and my number two, but I can't deny the amount of nostalgia, the importance overall this game had for me, just kind of turning me on to what became my favorite video game franchise. I know a lot of people out there have issues with it because it turned the series into more of an action-centric kind of thing for a while there. There's a lot of people that think the game's overrated, and I don't know if it would be my favorite if I played the originals with you guys. Maybe it wouldn't be, but this was my Resident Evil 1. This was my 1996. And so, yeah, I have nothing but such love and admiration and nostalgia for this game. Moving on to Rudy.
Okay, number four. And again, I like how you just said right now that this was your introduction.
Yeah.
This was not mine, obviously, because again, my point of view, I grew up with 1 and 2 in the 90s, right? So, in my opinion, this one was the one that had a mass appeal.
Yeah.
It was that anybody can just jump in. They don't have to know the background of the lore or the T-virus, because now we have Las Plagas. Mm-hmm. And anybody can just jump in and play it. And it was more of an arcade fun action game, and survival horror was non-existent at that point, in my opinion, with the Resident Evil games until later on 2017. So this one was fun. And just like the remake, it's like crack. Yes. It's addicting. And you get so much dopamine hits from all the achievements. I will give it praise for its management system.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
totally innovative.
Like the Tetris.
Yeah, it was totally innovative, and some people just spent minutes or longer than they had to because they just wanted to organize it, and it's that's an accomplishment in itself. This was also the first introduction to "Hello, stranger." Like,
what are you buying?
Like, who's
Not
this
enough
guy?
cash.
Yeah, he's cool and he serves his purpose, but again, it's a total departure. There was no "Hello, Jill." It's a key for you. There was nothing like that. There was just zombies and no ammo. So it was a game that gave you a lot of help. I love the quick time QTRs,
QTEs, quick time events.
I love that because that was my introduction to QTEs. I had never experienced that before. And for those watching, Cody and I had a conversation because I just beat Hauser in the RE remake. Krauser, thank you. And I told him that I actually prefer the fight with him in the GameCube version because it was scarier. Because you had to wait your turn to hit those buttons. If not, he was going to cut your throat. I found that more suspenseful and terrifying in the GameCube version than the remake that just came out. So it had a lot of pluses. Again, these aren't zombies; these are people that are communicating. Like, "Donde está, güey?" Like, there he is. Like yeah, they're communicating and they're climbing ladders. So that was terrifying in itself. So it was an entire departure from what I had known as Resident Evil. So it was cumbersome for me and bittersweet. I loved it. I actually have it. Hold on. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have it at number 8. Number 8 is where I have Resident Evil 4 for the GameCube. Again, a fun, amazing game. Practically flawless from a standpoint of playing and mechanics and all that stuff. But it's a total departure from the Resident Evil that I had known.
Gotcha. You know how many fucking times I died during a cutscene when I'd put my controller down and then a quick time event would come out of nowhere and I'm like, oh, look, and I would just get stabbed with something.
Yeah.
That game never lets you relax.
Yeah.
CB.
The comments right there, that cutscene fight was horrifying. As a kid, I can imagine what it was like as a kid. I was 25.
Yeah. You know how much of a pain in the ass some of these games were when I was younger, where you had to like press the button really fast, like the original Metal Gear Solid, where you had to withstand the torture. It took me like 3 years of aging before I could have enough stamina to actually get through that shit.
I have carpal tunnel from those.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, CP.
So this was the first of the, like, there's a half a decade of me kind of living vicariously through my partner at the time, and I didn't know they made a Resident Evil 4. We were visiting an uncle, and he was playing it. And I'm like, "This is Resident Evil," because he was just fucking cruising. It just didn't feel Resident Evil for me because he was cruising and shooting shit, and everything was just so busy. It didn't feel Resident Evil for me. But my significant other was like, "This is awesome," and I'm like, "Wait, you like video games?" And sure enough, we bought. I think it was on the PS2. We ended up
it got ported over the PS2, and then eventually it got ported over to every system, and I bought every single fucking one.
I think on the way home from my uncle's house, she was like, "Stop off at the mall real quick," and I was like, "Really?" All right. And we picked up Resident Evil 4, and she was into it way more than I was. And it
She
just
sounds awesome, and I'm starting to think you were the problem.
Go ahead. You want a number?
No. 911.
But yeah, it was a little too fast for me. It just wasn't Resident Evil for me. Having said that, I still have it at 7. Because it does have creepy elements to it, and the town reminds me of a certain Facebook group. If I must make a joke,
another inside joke I don't have any reference for.
Yes.
Happily be on the outside of that one.
Yeah.
Oh my god. All right. I'll hold the flag for that one then. Moving on to Resident Evil.
Oh, sorry. And it's the first game not to have the ink ribbons. And I thought that was a huge departure.
Okay.
Oh, right.
It's like, what? We can save as many times as we want. That takes a huge element of like, out of the game.
I was too much of a gatekeeper for the first one, where I was like, no, this ain't Resident Evil. This is bullshit.
Yeah, it's fun.
You were one of those.
President's daughter? Really? What is this, like that Sega game that we played at the arcade?
Yeah, I will say that was the only element of the game that aged poorly. The more that I played it was the Ashley segments, where you had, I'm just like, well, this bitch just stay next to me, and Yeah, that was something they fixed significantly in the remake, in my opinion. But we'll get there.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Resident Evil 5, 2009, came out for the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. An absolute love or hate game within this franchise. There are people that have very fond memories of it. There are those that call it one of, if not the worst game in the franchise. There was a ton of controversy upon release because it was in Africa. So there was like all these racism articles, like they made a game where you could just shoot a bunch of black people. Pretty stupid. But
but
You shoot a bunch of Spaniards, you know.
yeah, I know. Well, who cares about them? I'm just kidding. Yeah. That's pretty much how it felt. It was like, wait a minute. Never mind. So yeah, Resident
We've been
Evil
killing
5.
white people this whole time. What are you talking about?
Oh
Wait a
man,
minute.
so fucking dumb. Things haven't gotten any better either when it comes to
No, I
discourse
don't think it
online.
works.
Nonetheless, Resident Evil 5 is one of the most highly anticipated games in my memory because this was the first new Resident Evil game that I got to play. And so not only was I super excited about that, I was also excited about the fact that Chris and Jill and Wesker were coming back because this was the point where I was watching all the cutscenes, everything that they'd release, all the trailers. I knew everything there was to know about this game before playing it. But the biggest thing that excited me about it, and one of the biggest reasons why I still hold it very fondly, is the addition of co-op. And my God, do I miss couch co-op in gaming. Like ever since online gaming kind of took over, like they pretty much just did away with couch co-op. And some of my most fond memories is me and my brother, either of my brothers, playing co-op games. And so me and my brother Dylan played through this game and played the shit out of it. And so it's not as good as Resident Evil 4. It's not as well written. It's got a little bit more campiness to it. It's got a lot more action. They really toned down the horror side of things.
Yeah.
But I had so much fun playing this with my brother that it's still one of my fonder memories of Resident Evil games. I've never actually played through the game by myself. So maybe that's an unfair part of where I have it in my ranking, because a lot of people that I've heard that don't like this game have only ever played it single player. And so I don't know if it's just the AI of, I think her name's Shiva. The AI of that character maybe is really bad, or maybe the magic of that co-op really shielded me from a lot of the flaws of the game. But it's always been one of my favorites. And though I don't want it next, I do really want a remake of this one at some point, and they better have the co-op option in there. It is my number 8. CP.
So that
Exactly.
same
Rudy. No. I've seen your ranking. Stop talking.
That same co-op reason, that same significant other, we had that pre-order whenever it was announced, like the super edition that came with like a fucking medic bag, and like it came with all this shit. And lost that in a divorce. So she is certainly like you, Cody, as far as we have to check everything in this room.
You have to.
Yeah. Okay. So coming off of 4, which was just like fucking go. You know, I was trying to adapt to the new style of Resident Evil, and the only way I played Resident Evil 5 was couch co-op with your significant other, who, if anything, maybe AI Shiva was better than what I would have been for her, at least, because I was moving too fast. She was holding me up, and it was just like I didn't enjoy that experience for a lot of reasons. And the same way Resident Evil 1 is high for nostalgic purposes, Resident Evil 5 is extremely low for memories of those just being bitched at. You know, games are supposed to be, you know, when you escape and getting bitched at by your fucking significant other.
Isolation of the bad marriage.
Yeah. I'm like, fuck.
I'm sorry. We're gonna have to play it. You and me are gonna have to well, no, never mind, because I'll be the same guy bitching at you like, come the fuck on, let's go. You've died 85 times.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm like, all right, you done? No, I gotta find it. Oh fuck. Just
I'm gonna go
I'm
piss.
waiting.
Go open all the drawers.
But yeah, it's 12 on my list.
Ooh, super low. T.O. Rudy, bring us back.
Yeah, that felt like one of my podcast episodes for a second there, dude. So
There's your episode right there. How Resident Evil 5 ruined my marriage.
And it didn't. It like the fact that like it was quality time to her, and to me it was just like
Mm.
I do this stuff to escape you.
Wait. Part 5. I don't get the hate that people give it, or when
Yeah.
it came out.
Neither do I.
The racism bullshit. I never saw it because again,
Yeah.
we're killing Spaniards just a couple years ago. So what's the difference now? I do love the aesthetic of it. It just feels very grainy. I don't like that green filter that the game had, but I just love how you really felt you were in this world. I like that the Plagas virus was still kind of present, but we're now in a different country. The co-op, I didn't have anybody to play with. You know, my ex-wife was watching, and I believe the merchant was still in this one, right? Hello, stranger. He was
I
still in
don't
there,
think he was.
but there was a merchant that you can buy stuff, right?
I don't remember, to be honest with you. I know it wasn't the same merchant as 4, but if there was, it was very different. But I don't think the merchant came back until Village.
Resident Evil was but he wasn't the. Hold on, wait, I gotta check it now.
Okay.
Resident Evil
Well,
5.
while you're checking it out, let me catch up on Super Chats. Joshua Nelson, I'm late, but can we agree that RE6 is the worst? Well, we're
We'll get
almost
there.
there. We're almost there. So good thing I didn't answer.
Oh, he
that
wasn't.
earlier.
Okay. Wasn't okay.
I love RE4 Remake. It was my first experience playing that game. I started with 5. Hey, everyone. Hope the night's going good. Love Resident Evil chat. Awesome. Thank you, Kyle.
But I do remember the hype that you mentioned because this is like I think probably the apex of their popularity. And I just googled it right now. It's their highest grossing selling game of all the RE games. So the popularity was up there. The gameplay was identical, in my opinion, to RE4, and I enjoyed it. It's action based, and at that point, I kind of just let go of the survival horror piece. This is now our like action, with a little bit of scares here and there. I do remember liking what they did with Wesker. I do like that final fight. He was kind of like Matrixy in a sense,
Punching
but
boulders.
yeah, that was so stupid, man. I could not believe that. But actually, I was actually stuck at that point for a long time because he's pushing it. I'm like, what do I do? And I walked away and I backtracked.
Surely we don't punch it.
And then I looked online. You have to punch it. What? It's so stupid, man. It's punching the boulder. Anyway, great gameplay. I love that last sequence with Wesker. I love everything about it. It was fun. I love seeing Jill in there too as well.
Yeah.
She was kind of like under the influence with that spider on her chest that they kind of use in the RE movies as well. So yeah, I liked it, and it's actually at my number 11.
Oh, okay. A little higher. All right. Moving on from there to what should be a fun conversation. We have Resident Evil 6 in 2012 for the PS3 and the Xbox 360. Another very highly anticipated release for me. Not quite as much as RE5 because I didn't like 5 as much as 4. But I was really intrigued with the fact that there was going to be multiple campaigns with different characters. And being that I was somebody that was a fan of 5, I was still on my little hot streak there. And I'll go ahead and say it now. This is my number 14. So is this everybody's 14?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So that answers your question, the super chat that we just had. Yes, this is the worst Resident Evil game. This and the original Revelations, I'm not a big fan of, but this one just on paper is a bit of a train wreck. So I remember playing, I remember playing the demo, and you could demo the Leon campaign, and the Leon campaign was closer to Resident Evil 4. The Chris campaign was a little closer to Resident Evil 5. And then you had Baby Wesker and Sherry Birkin. That was just some weird other thing. And I don't know what happened with this game. Like, this took as much criticism as they got for as much people loved Resident Evil 4, as much criticism as they got about the new action-centric direction that then was just tenfold in Resident Evil 5, because Resident Evil 5 wasn't nearly as critically celebrated as 4. I never understood why they quadrupled down for 6, because 6 is basically like a Resident Evil Michael Bay movie. It's all monstrous action sequences and ridiculous over-the-top stuff. The villains and the villain motivations are, I don't even remember what the fuck they were, but they were so boring. There was 4 fucking campaigns in this game. 4. It was so punishing to get through. I remember getting through Leon first, and I was like, okay, that wasn't great, but it was still pretty cool. And then Chris was like way more action, and I was like, this wasn't even as good as Leon's, but it was still kind of cool. I remember feeling like his whatever his partner then was Reese or something like that was his secondary player that my brother was playing, and he had to become like a monster and sacrifice himself by the end of that one. So there was some cool heartfelt moments at the end of that one. I hated the campaign with Baby Wesker where you had the little fucking zombie arm. And then you had a fourth campaign to unlock where you play as Ada, where all of the answers are finally going to come through. So you got to play it 4 fucking times to get the whole like full grasp of the story. And if I remember correctly, basically by the end of it, it was that the main villain wanted to fuck Ada. And that was what all this was about. And I was like, what the hell, dude? Like,
we all do. What the fuck? That makes us all villains?
Pierce, not Reese. Thank you so much. But yeah, so this game, not only did I not enjoy it, not only did I never have the desire to replay it, but I barely had the strength to get through the entire game. And yeah, it's not the worst game I've ever played in my life, but it's the worst Resident Evil game I've ever played.
What's the campaign where you're like on a like a platform that's just slowly going up this cylindrical fucking
RE2?
Is it
Resident
that?
Evil 2?
No.
Yeah, there's like a train and somebody's
No, it's like huge.
I don't remember. I don't remember much about Resident Evil 6 because I just didn't enjoy it so much that it just left my brain.
It was that moment that both my wife at the time and I were like, "This is kind of shit," and for us to agree on that was quite a breakthrough.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to say about 6. Who wants to go next?
I'll
repeat everything I just said.
Well, I won't repeat everything you said, but
no,
to your
I'm
point,
kidding.
This felt like I said, total departure from the RE I knew. This is the equivalent of like, you know how Fast and the Furious was just racing movies and now they're super agents flying all over the damn world. That's how like far-fetched it went, and it totally did not make sense to me. I remember playing the Chris Redfield campaign first, and I'm shooting these gang members with masks, and I'm like, why am I fighting civilians? Like, what am I doing? Why does this feel like Call of Duty? And of course, like
that's exactly what it felt like.
Yeah, and I read that Capcom wanted to capture the Call of Duty audience because those games are always like, you know, Grand Theft Auto, always the best-selling games ever. So they wanted to make a game that appealed to all the masses, and the Call of Duty audience is what they wanted to capture. But it was
a Call of Duty game.
It wasn't a Resident Evil game. It was just a hodgepodge of just all these elements and ideas. And this is the first and only Resident Evil game I stopped playing. I just couldn't get through it. I played the Redfield campaign. Then I was with Leon, and I remember this one woman he was with. Just follow me. I know where this thing's at. Just keep going. And then he's all right. We're here. What do we do now? It's just right over here, Leon. Just follow me. I just got to go over here and find this one thing. And she's stringing him along. Go, fuck this, man. I'm done. I just turned it off because I just couldn't play no more. It was no atmosphere. It was like a world event type of game. Too many quick time events, and I felt I wasn't invested in any story.
Yeah,
and I just saw no point in continuing to play the game because I didn't care. And I will give Capcom all the credit in the world because I know this is probably they had every team working on this. It's very ambitious. It's a huge task to go ahead and make a game with so many campaigns. I don't think there's another game that has done that. To give the player a different ones. Yeah, to give us a different playing experience with each campaign. And plus, you're bringing all the characters back for the exception of Claire, I think, back, or Jill. I forget which one, but everyone's there. You know, Chris and Leon finally meet for the first time. So that was big deal.
Was underwhelming. It's like,
yeah, that's it. But yeah, it had a lot of promise. I admire the ambition, but it just, again, total departure from survival horror. And I didn't want to play it.
It is weird that Capcom would make such drastic moves because I mean they're a pretty sturdy company when you think of Mega Man, Street Fighter. Like, you guys are pretty good at pumping quality content out. Don't be looking in everybody else's backyard. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Oh yeah. This is the one game in the timeline that we've established so far that was like the big oh fuck, Resident Evil might be dead moment. And it required a gigantic rebuild.
Are you going to bring up the thing that we all kind of think about when we get to 7? That's not a Capcom game?
PT?
Yeah.
You can bring it up. I'll let you do it.
Yeah.
So moving on from, let's see, one was RE6, 2012. So we find ourselves years later in 2017, 5 years later, and Resident Evil 7 Biohazard comes out for the PS4 and the Xbox One. And I'll go last on this one. Go ahead, Mr. PT.
Yeah. So for those of you who didn't have a PS3, or was it on the 360 as well?
Was
I
it
don't know.
PS3 or PS4?
It was PS4.
Oh, well, whatever. Same shit. Same shit, only newer. Konami released this little playable trailer, and that's what PT stood for. And you had nothing else. And it's just this L-shaped hallway, and you feel like you're doing repetitive things, and there's a bathroom door that if you open it, there's some creepy shit behind it. And,
Oh yeah.
and
A little phone ringing. And
yeah, yep. And the
little
light
banisters.
yeah, the vestibule that every now and again there'd be a fucking coffin dripping hanging from there. You're like, what is going on here? So apparently that was supposed to be the next Silent Hill with Norman Reedus, and they abandoned it and then like wiped it. If people saved it on their hard drive, that was the only way you were able to keep it, because they just wiped it out completely. And when they first showed a teaser for Resident Evil 7, I was like, oh, they took the PT engine, because this looks just like fucking PT, and they're going to make a whole game about it. All right, good. We get our PT anyway, and it's now Resident Evil themed, so good. And very, very Texas Chainsaw Massacre
Yes.
elementy, if I must say so, with the family. And fucking again, every time Resident Evil took like a graphical, is that a word? Graphical?
Yeah.
Graphic leap forward, it was just mesmerizing. They knew how to do it, and they did it well. And it was back to being scary. And holy fuck. Yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of it. Right down to that, like, this is one of the few Resident Evil games where I would just stop and look around. I was so mesmerized by shit. Like, I was like, oh, the kitchen, there's just, oh, look at the stuff that they're actually cooking trash and fucking dead mice and shit. Like,
Dead mice.
But it was one of the few Resident Evils where I was my own worst enemy, where I'm just like, I want to look around for a little bit. Never played the VR version. I've heard, Cody, you've attested as much that is way scarier. But it is my number 2.
Ooh, way up there. T.O. Rudy.
Remember when I said earlier that with part 4, I was disappointed because there were so many people around you and you weren't alone. Now we're going back to the roots, baby. So 7 was the first time I had experienced fear in a game, being in that fucking house. So close.
The first time?
In a game. It's been the first time I had experienced it in a while.
Okay.
In a while. Let me kind of repeat myself there or rephrase it. But for those who don't know, and Cody knows this, I suffer from first person, that I get that motion sickness. So I can't play first person games like Call of Duties. I can never play them because I'll have a nauseating headache for like hours after the fact. So I force myself to play this game because it's an RE game and I can only play it an hour at a time. So it took me 6 months to beat and I finally beat it. But when it comes to just the atmosphere, the terror that you're feeling with that damn dad, one of the Baker dad, right? Walking through walls and just running after you. And then the whole fight sequence in his garage where he's in that car spinning out and the chainsaw fight. I think that's the greatest fight battle of all the Resident Evil games, in my opinion.
It's up there.
Including boss battles. It's up there. Maybe number 1 or 2, but it's the most memorable to me. And I knew it was coming and I was terrified to fight the guy because I knew I couldn't beat him. But from the atmosphere, the creepiness of it, even just one sequence, I remember just like feeling PT-ish vibes. PT, by the way, CP, in my opinion, is the most terrifying game I've ever played, in my opinion. And for those who haven't seen it, I actually made a fan-made film about PT. It's on my YouTube channel. Go check it out. They both seen it. They love it.
Very good.
Thank you. But I remember that one sequence when you see your girlfriend, she runs down the stairs and you're going down the stairs and there she is on the stairs. It reminded me of Evil Dead in a way, like, what the fuck is going on? And then she attacks you, like, what the shit? So again, and she's stabbing you and the knife goes through your arm. I'm like, this is Resident Evil. This is what I've been wanting for many years, and we're finally getting it. So it's at my number 4.
Wow.
Yeah, I loved it that much. It was a total reinvention. And according to Capcom, I know what you're saying, CV, like they copied it. Apparently, they said they were working on that for years before PC.
Bullshit.
Right.
Yeah, but I love,
And we don't even care, Capcom. Good on
Yeah,
you.
whatever.
Good on you.
Cover your ass for lawsuit's sake. That's fine.
Exactly. All right. Quick super chat. We have RE7 was phenomenal in VR. You were in that house. I highly recommend. Yeah. On that note, I played this game for the first time in its entirety in VR. The PlayStation VR came out not too long before that. This to me is the only true like full-on game that was really made for PlayStation VR. But when I tell you this, don't take it lightly. Resident Evil 7 in VR is the most terrifying video game experience I've ever had in my fucking life. And I hate the fact that Resident Evil Village didn't do the VR thing until 2 years later, because I wish I could have experienced that game without knowing what was behind every corner in VR, because that was awesome in VR too. We'll get into that. But Resident Evil 7, man, like it's a damn good game to play outside of VR. I've played it numerous times, just regular first person. A lot of people don't like the first person thing. I actually really like it for like a change of pace in the Resident Evil games. The Texas Chainsaw vibes, that nasty, icky house. Like I remember just playing the demo over and over and over again, which was just kind of like that little playable VHS tape segment. And was just like, dude, this is going to be fucking wicked. This is going to be gnarly. This is what they need after Resident Evil 6. And yeah, I had so many times where I was playing it in VR and just you get engrossed because you can't see anything except the game. And just like the fan blowing air on the back of your neck feels like somebody breathing on you. And like my wife used to be an asshole and like grab my fucking heel or something like that when I was playing it. But there were so many segments of this game, the Jack Baker stuff where you're having to hide and run from him and he fucking plows through a wall and comes at you. The first time that Marguerite jumps through that window when she's like in spider form, and that in VR, it's right here.
Yeah.
But that moment that you talked about, where it's in the first, 30 minutes of the game where you finally meet back up with Mia and she's normal and then she disappears for a second. And all of a sudden you have that open door and all you can see is the first 3 steps. The rest of it's darkness. And with, the headphones in for the VR, you can hear breathing and shit. And I'm like,
oh, fuck.
I don't want to fucking go down there. And I know I have to. And so like, you do like 1 step, you do like 2 steps, 3 step, all of a sudden I'm in a cutscene. I'm like, no, go back. And then you see that
I'm not ready.
You see that bitch coming up the stairs, and dude, when she jumps up, that shit's right here. And I was like, what the fuck?
Damn, that's so cool.
Oh, I wish I could experience it again. Beyond just giving me the scariest video game experience of all time, beyond getting Resident Evil back to where it needs to go, beyond giving you some of the best boss battles with Jack Baker specifically, and Marguerite was pretty good too. The only issue that I have with the game is it's very front loaded. I think that
I agree with that.
Couple of hours are the best of that experience, and the further you go along, it's diminishing returns.
That ship, that weird.
As soon as you get to the ship and you're playing as Mia, and the mold becomes the main villain, and it's just like the same 3 designs over and over again. The boss battles as you go on aren't as good, especially the last one when you finally fight the little girl. And it's just like a wall of mold with a face that you just shoot until a cutscene plays. I was like, that was a shit boss battle for the end. And I hated the fucking dollar store Chris Redfield that came down at the end. Like, hey, I'm Chris from Stars and we're going to do this. And it just, or he didn't say Stars. He said with Umbrella. I'm with Umbrella. And you're like, what the fuck, Chris with Umbrella? And then they just leave you with that.
He had lost like 80 pounds of muscle, or like,
yeah, exactly. I'm like, that ain't fucking Chris,
or
that's
something like that.
Bruce or something. I don't know who the fuck that is. But yeah, I adore this game. It's my number 5, and like my top 5 are a hard one to pick. Like you asked me, and I'm a different mood. It could go up to 4, it could go up to 3, but I fucking loved Biohazard, and the DLC and everything is pretty badass too. It's got a lot of replayability. And did you guys ever play it in the hardcore mode? No.
Yeah, it took me 6 months to play it, man.
You play it in the hardcore mode, and it changes everything. It changes the locations of certain things. Jack Baker comes out in different spots. He comes out in areas where you used to be safe, and so that was fucking awesome too. And I played it that way, and I was like, "Wait a minute, you're not supposed to come out here. What the fuck?" And then I'm like running away, and it's a good one. It's a really good one.
real quick, like you both mentioned Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I agree with that. And I think another layer it added to the horror. It felt like a horror movie that you were playing through. And one thing I appreciate is when you would find VHS tapes and you would play them, and it'd show like exposition of the room you're about to go in, and it showed what happened, and it felt very real.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
That
so
birthday
good.
party puzzle saw trap or whatever.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I loved it. It just too, again, you're walking into a room, but now you saw this video, what happened in that room. Now you're terrified to go in there. Just that alone and what it does to the player, I applaud. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, very much so. All right, moving on from that, we have the Resident Evil 2 remake in 2019 for the PS4 and the Xbox One. And this I was really, really excited for because specifically with me, because I didn't get a chance to really play the original games in their heyday. And so I got a chance to play 2 and 3 and eventually 1, and I got to appreciate them for what they were, but I never really had that awesome experience. And so I was really looking forward to seeing what they could do to modernize this one. And I mean, they've been on a hot streak lately with their remakes, but this came out. This is a very strong argument for greatest video game remake of all time. They did so much good with it, where they held on to everything that you would love and want from the original game while modernizing so much about it. Mr. X is fucking terrifying in this game. Like, that's my favorite of like the Resident Evil enemies that aren't like a main story boss or whatever, because this fucking dude just hearing his footsteps sometimes would scare the shit out of you, where you're just like, where the fuck is he? Is he above me? Is he outside the door? Sometimes you'd open a door and he'd fucking come through, and then you'd have to haul ass and turn around and go back. And I love the fact that he was unscripted. He was just roaming. And even the scripted moments, the first time you walk into a liquor, that shit fucking made me jump out of my skin, where you open the door and there's the rain, and all of a sudden you see that dead body and then the fucking tongue, and you're just like, you try to go back to the door. The puzzles were really well done. It was a lot more difficult too. I remember when I was playing this and I was just unloading a whole clip into a zombie's head, and I'm like, what the fuck? That's supposed to be like it. And they were bullet sponges in this one. The graphical upgrade of the RPD I thought was awesome. I got a mosquito in my room. Not anymore, bitch.
That's a mosquito?
Dead. Yeah,
Jeez,
it was.
that a fly. Jeez.
Dead.
It
Anyway,
was a mosquito, motherfucker.
Yeah, there you go. They bring back the whole different scenarios. You got Claire's story, you got Leon's story, then they both have their little B-side story that's slightly different. All the unlockables that I love to do, where you play through and you do speed runs and get certain run times of the game to unlock an infinite launcher and all these other things. The boss battles were fucking incredible. Like, this was a game that I had almost nothing negative to say about. I had a couple of things when I first reviewed it. I don't even remember what the hell they are. I don't even care anymore. To me, it's damn near a perfect game. And this one for me, and again, like, my top 5 is so hard. This one is my number 3. And on another day, it could be my number 2. Moving on to Rudy. CP, go ahead.
It's my 3 as well.
Okay.
For everything I said about 7, I got to enjoy 2 again, and 2 and 3 I don't remember quite as much. Again, you'd be surprised how much nostalgia like contains your memory and what you remember of a certain game. I remember 1 vividly, 2 less so, and 3 far less so, because it was way shorter. But seeing like the streets and the updated graphics for
the
the
fire
lighting,
and shit.
or when the fucking chopper crashes in the rain, like, that is an incredible scene.
You go back to the chopper, all of a sudden that fucker lifts it up and
Yeah.
just looks at you.
It was just awesome. It's 3 for me as well. I'm sorry, go ahead, Rudy.
No, continue. I mean, unless you're done.
I
He's done. That was his
He's
cue.
done. Okay. I actually have it number 6 for me. And for me, loving the original, believe it or not, when this came out, I wasn't really into it. I bought it when the day it was released, and I remember playing it. And like you said, Cody, I remember it was really hard. I'm like, what the hell? Like, it's taking a lot of ammo just to put one zombie down. And I remember that being different from the original game experience. I had loved the additions to it, but like, I don't know where it was. After I met the liquor, I put the game down and I didn't play for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
I didn't. I don't know why. I just was invested in it. I think it's because I was in a toxic relationship.
Life took over.
Life
Yeah.
took over, and I just was invested
I
into
play
it.
through toxic relationships.
Yeah,
Mm.
well, then I broke up with this person, and then I'm like, let me put it back in, and I put it in, and I played it nonstop for like a week, and I beat it. And
You're
I
not
love.
supposed to put it back in if you're having a toxic relationship. You're supposed to just let it. Oh, you meant the game. Sorry.
Yeah, just a tip. Anyway, I remember loving what the additions to it. I don't have a lot of technical notes on it, but I just remember just going through the whole remember berries and nostalgic feelings of just seeing this enhancement of this game I played in 1998, and here I am in 2019 playing it, and I enjoyed it. I remember being a little disappointed with Claire's face animations, but I remember finding her campaign scarier than Leon's.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah, you get that sheriff guy or whatever the chief is when he's trying to take Sherry and locking her up and shit.
Yeah,
I liked how different the two campaigns were. They felt significantly different. You have different keys for different characters, and so there was a lot of replayability there. All right. Moving on from that, just about a year after the release of the Resident Evil 2 remake, we got the long-awaited Resident Evil 3 Nemesis remake. 2020, PS4, Xbox One. This came out right before the world shut down.
Chicken
And-
soup for the COVID soul.
Do what? Yeah, exactly. And I'll say, this is a game that, much like Resident Evil 5, I don't completely understand a lot of the hate that it gets. I understand some of the criticisms. I understand some of the disappointment, especially if you love the original, that they cut it down a bit. And it is a significantly smaller experience than Resident Evil 2 that just came out a year ago and was the exact same price point. So that I agree on everything. This was not a $60 game. But the game that you get, I thought, is pretty fucking cool. I like that it's just like the original Resident Evil 3. The pacing and the action side of things is ramped up just a little bit. You've got this like dodge maneuver that you can do. I thought Jill was a really cool character, and again, you get to experience some of the same places of Resident Evil 2, but it's like through a different perspective at a different time. And there's even the segment in where Carlos has to go back through the Resident Evil Police Department. You get to see some of the shit that was just in the last game. And the early sections of Nemesis I thought were incredible. Like the first half of the game or so. Once he became like the dog, I didn't like it as much. But when he was actually Nemesis as we know him, I thought he was fucking awesome. The biggest disappointment that I had with this game was just really a lot of the negatives towards this is just because Resident Evil 2 set the bar so high just a year ago. And I wish they would have utilized Nemesis more of the way that they utilized Mr. X, where he was unscripted and he would show up in places and he would, follow you into save rooms or some shit like that would just keep you on the edge of your seat. The fact that he was such a scripted encounter, I thought was a little disappointing, but I still think it's a very fun game. And once you beat it and you get some of the unlockables, it's very quick. I beat it in just over an hour. The last time that I played it, me and CP were doing a live stream because I sent him a copy of it because he hasn't played it. And I said, let's do a live stream. You stream it on your channel, I'll stream it on mine, and we'll both play and we'll have our audio going. And I beat the game and he was like still in the police department or some shit. He was like, I'm still in the city trying to do some shit. And I was like, all right, well, I'll just sit around and bullshit with you then.
An hour? Damn, dude. Shit,
yeah. It's just I think maybe an hour and 10 minutes or something like that. You can fly through that third game. It's pretty short. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I get the criticisms. They should have taken more time with it, but I still have a good time with it. It's my number 9.
Okay. And while he's out, I guess I'll go. Yes, I don't get the hate. But again, playing the original and loving the original on the PS1, I was incredibly disappointed how short it was. As you just mentioned, there's a whole clock tower sequence. There's a whole like Resident Evil Park sequence that's not there. The puzzles are not anywhere near as complex as they were in the original.
Yeah,
I didn't like the fact that they didn't give you the choice anymore of like, what do you want to do? Fight Nemesis or go this way? That was a pivotal piece of Nemesis, the original, and for them to take that away, that's what separated that game from all the others. Is that choice and that experience, and the fact that they took that out was really disappointing. I remember like saving up so much Magnum ammo, and then having the final boss battle, and I had like 80 rounds of Magnum ammo. Like I didn't even use it.
Yeah,
I'm like, come on, I was all prepping for the final battle, and it just didn't happen. So I was really upset about that. I will say, visually, it's beautiful. I remember just looking at I just mentioned I was disappointed in Claire's animations.
Yeah.
And I just love what they did with Jill's. I mean, I love the model that they use. I actually follow her on YouTube. I mean, she looks gorgeous, man, but it looks great. They
Yeah.
put more care into the facial animations with Jill and even Carlos and everybody else. It looks better than RE2. But again, as far as the gameplay, I will agree with you. There's a huge disconnect because when Nemesis is not in his leather outfit and he turns into this huge dog, it's like, who am I fighting now? What is this? Like, I get he's I get what's going on, but it's like it totally just disconnected with me. And again, disappointing because it's too short, and I wish it were longer.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It should be
no
longer.
DLC in there anywhere. There's like no mini games.
That's what's hard about it is like, okay, if we're not going to get other scenarios or other characters, which there wasn't in the original game, or there's no mercenaries, there's nothing, just the one campaign, and they cut things out of the game for the campaign, it is disappointing. And that's why it's if they had charged $40 for this game, I think that would have smoothed over a lot. But the fact that this was the same exact price that you just paid a year ago for Resident Evil 2, which is
for a quarter of the game,
4 times the amount of content at least, I get that aspect of it for sure. But just taking the game on its own merits, I still think it's a pretty fun game where a lot of people really don't like it. We'll catch up on Super Chats really quick. Dated or not, I love going back and playing the original Resident Evils. I love the remakes, but the originals are still some of my favorite games to replay.
Yeah.
Is Resident Evil 9 the next game coming out, or are we getting another remake? Do you guys know? I'm enjoying your conversation. Well, good. I'm enjoying you being here, Jigsaw Mancini. But no, I don't know. They haven't announced it yet. I would imagine that we're in line for another mainline game because that seems to be their pattern so far is remake, new game, with the exception of 3, but they kind of, fast tracked that one. So they put so much time and energy. They're enjoying a lot of success with Resident Evil 4 right now. I wouldn't be surprised if we get an announcement next year that in 2025, maybe we'll have Resident Evil 9. And I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know if it's going to be continuing the first person shooter or what they're doing. I wouldn't mind, honestly, if they would just kind of focus on remakes for a little bit and spend a lot of time to do one badass final game and get Resident Evil 9 maybe in like 2026. But they haven't said anything yet. And we have Resident Evil 3 2020 is a good game, but a poor remake. That's probably a good way to put it.
Yeah, I can meet halfway there. Yeah.
I bought Resident Evil 3 for sale at $15. Well, you get a lot of money or a lot of bang for your buck for 15 then.
Yeah.
Did you say where it was in your ranking?
Did I? I said
I don't think so.
Oh, this is a remake, right?
Yeah.
12.
12. Okay.
Yeah.
A little low. Well, we'll move on. CP's dealing with something at the moment. Let's see. Moving on to Resident Evil Village. And this came out 2021, PlayStation 5, Series X. It also came out on PS4 and the Xbox One, I believe. And this was a very, very highly anticipated game for me because I loved Resident Evil 7 so much. Plus, I was still riding the high of the two remakes that I enjoyed. And so to me, it was like Resident Evil's back on fire, baby. Like Resident Evil's just
and
back.
Lady D.
And Lady D. So this is actually the game that got me and Rudy together. This was our bromance glue.
It was.
So we had Resident Evil Village coming out, and Rudy had reached out to me and we had talked a couple of times about doing something Metal Gear Solid related, but Metal Gear Solid has been doing dick for years, so there was nothing to really talk about. And I remember this was coming out and I was like, well, are you a Resident Evil fan? Yeah, I am. I said, well, fuck it, let's do some rankings. And so that kicked everything off for us. But Resident Evil Village is so fucking awesome. That is a game that to me, it plays a lot off of some of the things they did in Resident Evil 4. It was kind of like they did a Resident Evil 4 version of Biohazard. And so you get some of that village feel back, some of that old timiness there. You got the merchant in the form of the Duke. You have some really awesome bosses in this one, the battles themselves, as well as just the characters. And they basically took everything that we loved about Resident Evil 7. It's not quite as scary as Resident Evil 7. It's not quite as atmospheric as Resident Evil 7, but they took everything that they did well there and they kind of beefed it up. They did a little bit more action. You got the werewolves, which are fucking terrifying, especially in VR, when those things get right up on your face and they're coming at you and grabbing you and biting you. I love the fact that they had the treasure hunting in this one, which again, and then they implemented that into Resident Evil 4 Remake. That was really fun. Anything that adds replayability for me, I love. So I like that, you could kind of pause from all the terror and the tension and just kind of go and try to put treasures together and try to hunt down things. I thought it was a pretty satisfying conclusion. We'll see. Conclusion question mark for the Ethan Winters storyline. I liked the way that they implemented Chris Redfield. I never believed for a second that he actually turned to be a bad guy, but I liked the way that they utilized him in the story. It made sense of whatever they did at the end of Resident Evil 7 and kind of brought the Ethan Winters stuff into the greater Resident Evil lore. And if you go and you search through some of the documents, you can see some of the ties to the Spencer Mansion, and it kind of all comes full circle. The only negatives that I had with this game was that, much like Resident Evil 7, I feel like it's front loaded. I feel like the Lady D segment and that castle and all of that is the best part of the game. And as you go along, it's less. And I didn't love the ending boss battle again with Mother Miranda. I hate that fucking boss battle. So I really dug this one. This is one of my favorites. Had a great time with it. I've played it in the regular mode. I played it in the third person mode that came out with the DLC. And then just most recently, I played it with the PlayStation VR 2. And all three modes are really cool. I wish I could have played it from the get with VR, though. It might have been even higher on this list. But as of right now, it is my number 4.
Ooh, that's pretty high, man. All right,
Yeah.
cool. For me, it's, you already touched on this, but it's not as scary as 7. So that's one thing I was disappointed with. You had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre environment with 7. Here, this honestly felt like a Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Yeah.
Where you just had like all these insane characters and all of them totally different from one another. And of course, Lady D, my God, that's a whole other conversation. But I love the contrast of characters. I love that each world or land or part of the land that these people lived on was a different experience. The whole infant baby sequence as one of the top terrifying moments of a RE game I've had, and it was very, I felt like a paranormal type of experience, which is very odd for the Resident Evil space, but I loved it. And that was I guess like one of my key and play moments of that game. That's my favorites. I do love the Duke, how he was more or less like the merchant, but you get the treasure aspect to it. And I mentioned this on my rankings. As far as characters go in Resident Evil, I've always felt they were really bland. I mean, not really deep, of the very surface level, like, they're soldiers or they're cops. They've been through some shit, but you don't know anything about their father or mother or anything like that. So, and I remember with 7, one of the weak aspects of it was Ethan Winters. I didn't like him as a protagonist.
I agree.
And when you play Village 7, I found myself very emotionally caught up with his story. And I don't want to, should I say spoilers? We're fine with spoilers.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Fuck it.
And then the way Village ends, I remember like, holy shit, I'm actually emotional here because this guy sacrifices himself. First off, he's trying to find his daughter, and any parent can relate to that. And 2, he sacrifices himself so his daughter can live. And that moment where he hands his daughter over to Redfield and says, take care of her. Dude, I was like, this is awesome. So as far as a character standpoint, Ethan Winters at that moment became one of my favorite characters in the Resident Evil series because I did not see it coming. I thought he was a weak protagonist, but then you find out in the game he actually died in Resident Evil 6 and that he's just been living in this weird mold state since then. So that was a nice little twist. And again, I just found myself way more emotional dying at the end of this game because it shows you with the hand on the trigger, and you're looking at the enemy right in front of you and you just click it. And oh, that's so fucking cool, dude. It's a good moment in the game that I didn't expect at all in a Resident Evil franchise. So I applaud that. And I actually have it at number 7.
Wow. Okay. Number 7. Numero 7. All right. We got,
I want a Lady D game. Give me.
That was his only question when I told him I was playing it in VR. He's like, how big is her tits?
Yeah.
In VR. And I'm like, the size of your head. Oh man. All right.
Just lend it to the VR set to me for a weekend, please. That's all I need it for.
Just clean it before you send it back. Oh man. All right. Moving on to the final entry here. We got the recently released Resident Evil 4 remake for PS5, Series X. And I don't remember if this is released to the previous generation or not, but if not, too bad. Buy a new console. 2023. So just a couple of weeks ago. And my God, when they announced this, I was as nervous as anybody. I was like Resident Evil 4 still plays really fucking well. Do we really need a remake to this? And the fact that Resident Evil 3 was a shortened version. I was terrified that Resident Evil 4 Remake was going to be a shortened version because that's a long game. By Resident Evil standards, there's a lot in Resident Evil 4. And so I was just seeing like the worst version. I'm like, oh, they're going to condense it. They're going to do this. Like, are they going to lose the elements of Resident Evil 4? Are they going to try to make it too much? Like, oh, all I had was worries until I saw the first gameplay trailer, whatever they released. And I was like, holy fuck, they might have done it. Like, they're trying to make it scarier, a little bit darker. They're trying to make it more tonally balanced with the original games, maybe. Okay, I see what you're doing. And the further it got along to the release, the more hyped and the more excited that I got. I played the demo like 17 times. And I was like, God damn, this is fucking awesome. This feels great. I love the way that they incorporated the knife to where now the knife is a lot more of a kind of a strategic element in there, and they break and you got to repair them or get more.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when the game finally came out, I live streamed my entire experience. I could not put this fucking thing down. Could not put it down. And so I kept playing it, and it was so exciting to be able to play a remake, because I didn't have this experience with the 2 and 3 remake, to play a remake to a game that I know like the back of my hand. And I even played Resident Evil 4, the original, on a live stream like a couple of days before the new one came out, just to kind of refresh myself. And so playing through the game and just knowing certain things, because certain areas are different, but certain areas are almost identical. So knowing certain things and where I'm supposed to go, and having seen where the game changes things, even seeing where a couple of creative ways where the game kind of plays on your knowledge and kind of fucks you over if you think you know what's going on. The way that they updated so much about it, I think with the exception of Salazar, every single boss fight in this game is a better version of the one in the original. I loved that they incorporated the little side missions for the merchant and the treasure hunting and the little side objectives. Again, putting more content in there and updating certain things, like the minecart ride was really cool. And the few segments that they took out of the game, of which there's only like 4 or 5, the only significant one was U3, the U3 boss fight. But there's rumors that they're going to put that in the Ada DLC. So that will heal that wound for me. With the exception of that U3 boss fight, I didn't really miss any of the things that they took out. Like, I remember the little lava room with the dragon platforms, and then there's the little laser grid thing from the Resident Evil movie.
Yeah, I missed that. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of segments where I'm like, okay, like you could have put that in there, but I'm not. You replaced it with other things, and so I'm not upset. And so when I got to the end of this game, I was like, that was fucking awesome. And dude, I played this game nonstop until I beat it 9 times. I sped through it. I played it on professional. I did S+ rankings. I unlocked everything there was to unlock. I got the platinum trophy. I did a whole live stream of my last playthrough where it was just the knife and pistol only run. That was the last trophy I had to do, and beat it in just over 3 hours. And I don't do that. Like, when I play a new game, I get sick of it very quickly, because I'll play through it. I might play through it a second time if it's short enough to get a couple of trophies, but usually by then I'm done. And I played this fucking thing 9 times. And if you sat me down and wanted to play it again right now, I would do it. I loved it. I was so happy with what they did. It delivered everything that I missed from that original game, and delivered so much that was a really cool modernization of it. I seriously toyed with putting this at number 1 because I enjoyed it so much. As it stands, it's my number 2. But the reason that I had to give the original the edge is just because it was so important to me. And I've loved that game for, going on, 16 years now, 17 years. And so it's hard for me to have recency bias over a game that I love so much. But to me, this is a perfect Resident Evil 4 remake. And as of right now, this is my favorite video game remake of all time. I fucking love this thing. So I can't wait for the DLC to come out. Mercenaries was fun, although it was, short-lived. I got the 3 stages on S in my first run. I was like, okay, cool. And then so they got Ada, Assignment Ada, or Separate Ways or something coming at some point. We'll see what that's like. But as of right now, fucking love this game. So moving on to you, sir.
It's funny how games, like anything when we're at a young age, can impact us. Like I said, RE1 was my introduction to a video game medium that actually made me fearful and be scared like I was watching a movie. So that will always stay with me, just like 4 with you. But Resident Evil 4, and I've talked to Cody like when text conversations, like this game is crack. It's like crack, the most addictive crack you can ever inject in your body, and it's so addictive to play. Like there's so much satisfaction and dopamine hits that I have. Like the mechanics, the gameplay, the way the physics are where Leon just kind of shifts his movement and pivots. I love just visiting the merchant and just the rewarding and just the menu layouts, and just how when you select an option, you just hold the button down. And there's like this noise, like a notification sound. Everything feels so rewarding and earned. And it's so easy to get the hang of. Like, for example, I mentioned this to you. I was playing God of War that just came out on the PS5 and a PS4, and I hated the menu. To the point where I just couldn't play it. Like I hate this. It's so confusing. I don't know what this means. With this one, I'm in there like maybe 30 minutes, and it just feels natural. Everything feels so natural and well played. It's probably one of the best design games I've ever experienced. And as far as the remake goes, I was a little disappointed in a few things. Real quick, let me rewind. The parry maneuver is so satisfying when you execute it. It's so satisfying, especially when you're in a battle and you just parrying all these events like you're John Wick. I had to move that action to R2. So ever since I did that, it's pretty cool, dude. I love that feeling, and I love how you have to maintain your weapons in your vests with keep them up because of wear and tear. The disappointments that I have with it is it's not really innovative. It's using the same, like when you get a zombie attack, you have the R2 to stab them. That's the same thing we had in the RE remake on the GameCube. There really wasn't a lot of enhancements to it, in my opinion. And it wasn't terrifying. And again, terrifying and Resident Evil to me are hand in hand, but this is an exact carbon copy of RE4. So I get that. It's the same experience, but just enhanced. And it's very user-friendly. I'm a little disappointed with the animations with Leon. They're not really crisp. They feel like the same as all the GameCube game. And I know they could have done animations with Leon better, because when you look at that one guy with the beard? And, Mendes, he looks great, man. He looks fantastic. He's probably the best rendered face in that entire game, along with Luis. And I wish they would have gave Leon more care, because it just looks very bland, and they could have done more. But it's a fantastic game, dude. Like I said, a perfect carbon copy of RE4. This game's going to be like their bestseller, I think, in when the numbers come in. I have it at number 5, but it's fucking awesome, dude. Like I said, I don't have any. And when I say cons, I'm really nitpicking, because it's flawless. It's very flawless. But again, those are just like my takeaways of it. Like I wish they would have done a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm with you. That was the same way that I had to phrase it in my review. I'm like, these aren't really negatives. This is just me being a fucking a greedy bitch about all the little tiny things that I want. What did you think about the way that they utilized Ashley in this one? Because I thought that they did a much better job at making it a lot less annoying and a lot less cumbersome of an experience whenever you have to escort her.
You know what? To be honest, I didn't play 4 as much as you did, and the experience with her was I didn't see anything different. It was very similar. I know there was some dialogue that was removed. My favorite character really in the game, my favorite character is actually Luis, being Latin.
I like how they expanded his character in this one. He stuck around longer.
And again, just seeing one of my Latin brothers up there, and the voice actor. I love the voice actor. He's very like an Antonio Banderas, and he's very charismatic. And I laughed out loud when he called Leon Sancho, which for those who don't know means like boyfriend. I'm like, that's fucking funny. I love that. I love that camaraderie. That
with the push, Sancho.
Yeah, I love that. So he was probably my favorite character as far as overall writing, script, the way he looked, the way he kind of walked, everything about him was very unique. And he stood out. So I do love that piece. But Ashley was the same in my opinion. Again, I could be wrong because I only played it a couple times.
I love the moment with Luis after you get done with the mine cart section and you're walking across this little thing and the door's right there, and then the fucking thing collapses. And you're like, what the hell? And he's like, oh, it's okay. We can go down and go all the way around. And he goes, pain in my ass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why are you helping us? Let's just say it makes me feel better. Like I love that shit. That's pretty cool. Very, like I said, Desperado, Antonio Banderas type of style. It kind of reminded me of him in Assassins.
Yeah.
In a weird way, but not the same. But I just love how he just stood out as a character.
I hear you. Yeah. So yeah, I love the game. I'm looking forward to jumping into it again at some point. But 9 was enough. I had to put it down for a while because it was taking over. I was like, I'm not getting shit done. I just got to keep playing Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
So yeah, had a blast with it. Huge recommendations for that one. Well, let's take I'll tell you what, let's take questions. We'll cut it off at 2:15, 2 hours and 15 if CP doesn't come back. But we'll buy some time to see if he comes back. He might have had to leave us for the night. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wish what?
Go ahead. You want me to go?
Yeah.
The game is so addicting, everybody. Like I said, it's such a dopamine high. Just the play mechanics. I love treasure hunting. I love putting jewels in chalices. Did you hear what I said? I love putting jewels in chalices. And what the hell is that got to do with Resident Evil? I don't know, but I love doing it, man.
Yeah.
And I love checking the chart to see which color combination is going to give me the most vessels, whatever. But it's addicting, man. It's a fun game.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of wish the Krauser had a time fight like the original. Luis and Ashley are better by a country mile. I actually like the fact that there wasn't that timed element. That was always annoying to me, especially when you play through it on the first time on hardcore. It's hard enough without a ticking time bomb.
We see that's the thing. Well, Resident Evil 1 and 2, there was always a self-destruct, something going on, and you had a time period to fight the enemy, and that just added tension. So I would love that.
Yeah,
that's a good take. Yeah.
Resident Evil 4 Remake was most anticipated RE game and in general of the year. I agree. They gave us a fair trade on the things they omitted. I love it playing it at this very moment. Well, hell yeah. Resident Evilception going on. Let's see.
And again, I just want to praise it more because when you're loading bullets in your rifle, you can feel it feels like you're loading it into the controller. The way they have the animations and vibrations tied to the weapon, it feels authentic to the weapon that you're loading. So it's flawless, man. I love it.
Fun fact, Ashley in the original Resident Evil 4 was voiced by Carolyn Lawrence, who voices Sandy Cheeks and SpongeBob. Now I'm never going to be able to unhear that. Leon, help! Do you guys have a Resident Evil jump scare that made you jump the highest? Jack Baker coming through the wall got me good. Jump scare was when Marguerite busts through that window whenever you're going up the staircase when she's in spider form, because that shit was right here in VR. That was the one where I was just like, fuck.
For me, it's RE2 on the PlayStation when, the door animation's loading. You think nothing's going to happen. Then the door opens and the zombies walk out. That was the biggest jump scare for me, dude. I think I spilled my soda.
Oh, Resident Evil was very addictive. I started playing Biohazard 3 days ago, and I'm already on my 4th playthrough. Hell yeah. Currently going for the S+ professional rank. Wish me luck. Dude, it's a bitch.
Good
luck. It is a bitch. I hope you got some things on your side, like the Chicago sweeper, maybe even the chicken hat for less damage. Yeah, I hope you got something. Otherwise, you're a better man than me. But that was fucking rough. Chapter 10 and 11, I think. The one with the bugs and the minecart ride and the Krauser fight, that fucked me up for like a whole day. And then the one after that was an absolute bitch too. Because to get the S+, you can only save 15 times, and there's 16 chapters. So there you got to pick and choose your moments to save. And I was trying to save at the end of every chapter. And so I tried to play through every chapter in one go without dying. And it was fine-ish until 10 and 11. And 10 and 11 fucked me up pretty bad. I want more levels in the RE4 Remake Mercenaries. Crossing my fingers at the DLC. I'm sure they'll add more. I have beat Resident Evil 4 Remake 7 times now. Got to get that S+. Damn right. Have you played Shadows of Rose from Village? What did you think? I did. I played Shadows of Rose, and I played through the game in third person. The third person thing was cool, but it wasn't the way the game was meant to be played. So it's not my preferred way. And then you have Shadows of Rose, the little DLC thing. It was fine.
I haven't played it. I didn't know it came out.
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, playing as Ethan's daughter was interesting. I thought that was going to be the storyline for the next game, but it's just a storyline for the DLC. So her going back and experiencing some areas of Village, you kind of go back through the dollhouse segment with the baby. Instead of the baby, though, it's mannequins, and mannequins chase you, and they only stop moving when you look at them. So if you stare at them, they're like this in the background, and then as soon as you turn around, you hear... So that part was pretty cool, but story-wise, it didn't really do much for me as far as like a companion to the game. It's worth checking out though for a little DLC. Do you think they should adapt Resident Evil again, even though they messed up so many times? Well, they are. They are. They got some movie coming out called Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles, which tells me they, again, have no idea what the fuck they're doing, because Umbrella Chronicles is a Wii game that is a light shooter version of a couple of the different games, which using that as your title means that you're just pulling fucking titles off of Google and you don't know what the hell you're doing. So and they got Paul W.S. Anderson as a producer, and they were using that as like their big like advertisement, like, we got him back, and we're all like, so fucking what? That's not a good thing.
It's not a flex, dude.
Yeah, exactly. So no. They had the right idea in mind with Welcome to Raccoon City, but they messed up by trying to do 2 games in 1 movie. So I don't know, until they need to just pause. They need to take a cue from Last of Us. I mean, Resident Evil should be so fucking simple to come up with an idea to adapt it. I've said it numerous times. Do a TV series, 6 to 8 episodes. Every season's a game.
Yep.
First season, Spencer Mansion. Second season, RPD, and then just it writes itself. So no, I don't have any faith in this new adaptation. I'm stuck on the part with the what? It jumped as soon as I clicked it. What the fuck? I'm stuck on the part with the 2 Garadors on hardcore now. It's a real bitch. Yeah, try it on professional. That was a motherfucker in professional. Absolute bitch. So yeah, that's one of the harder parts for sure. What Resident Evil game is the hardest to platinum? I almost have Biohazard. I'm wanting to get all of them platinum. Well, I don't have the platinum for Biohazard, but I've never really tried for it. I don't have the platinum on Village because of the 1 trophy that you have to get S+ on all of the mercenaries modes, which pisses me off because I don't really like that mercenaries mode. Of the ones that I've gotten, I've got the platinum for the 2 remake, the 3 remake, and the 4 remake.
And what's platinum? Like
Platinum
you do all
trophies, so you got all the trophies.
Shit. Okay.
Resident Evil 4 was the hardest for sure because it required you to do so much to get a couple of them.
Wow.
And so yeah, that one to me is the hardest to platinum. But I've looked at the trophies for the Resident Evil remake, and that one looks like it would be an absolute bitch because you have to play it in all of the different hard modes, which there's like 3 different ones, and you got to beat the game on invisible enemies mode, which I've never even tried, but fuck that.
Yeah.
So yeah. No,
invisible enemies.
Yeah.
Screw that shit.
What is your favorite boss fight in the Resident Evil franchise, Rudy?
Like I mentioned earlier, the chainsaw fight in Resident Evil 6.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Epic.
Right.
One of the best ever.
That's right. That's
maybe in all of gaming that in my personal experience, it's just so. It looks great. It looks great, man. It feels. You feel like it just feels authentic to the game. It just looks wonderful. The whole experience is awesome, dude. So yeah, the chainsaw fight.
Gotcha.
God, it's such an awesome experience.
Let's see here. Sorry, I'm late, guys. Just got done with Beau is Afraid. I've never been so exhausted from sitting. Yeah, I hear you, dude. I saw that this afternoon, and my ass was not happy.
Yeah, I'll wait for that on Amazon or something.
Oh, man. That 3 hours felt like 5. Cody, which is your preferred handgun on Resident Evil 4? I'm using the Matilda on my professional run. My preferred one is the Blacktail. It's just slightly less powerful than the Red 9, but it's faster. So that's the one that I always prefer.
Mine's a Red 9.
That's most people's favorite because it's the most powerful one when you upgrade it. Let's see here. I love the Village Mercenaries so damn much. Need some luck on your side. Yeah, I'll play it again at some point. I didn't care for it as much just because like playing it's fun, but having to get the S+ was a fucking pain in my ass. And so I just kind of got mad and stopped playing it. I got S+ on the first 3, but then I got stuck on the factory level and I played it like 12 times and just couldn't get close. And so I just gave up.
Damn.
Yeah, it happens. All right, guys. Well, we'll wrap it up here. I'm not sure. Let's see. Actually, really quick. I think CP sent me his ranking so I can at least complete his side of things. Did he? Maybe he didn't. I think he sent it in our group chat, didn't he? So it's gonna have to scroll.
I think he did.
Son of a bitch. Sending it in our group chat and shit. Okay, yes. So as far as let's see, he left us when He left us at Resident Evil 2 Remake, I believe. The Resident Evil 2 Remake is his number 3. That's this one right here. The Resident Evil 3 Remake is 14. His number 8. Resident Evil Village is his number 4. And the Resident Evil 4 Remake, which he has in parentheses, secondhand watching only because he didn't get a chance to actually play it, is his number 5. So that completes his ranking. He had to step away, unfortunately. But thank you, everybody, for watching. This was a lot of fun. I always love being able to talk about something a little different. And I love this franchise. So thank you, Rudy, for joining me on this one. I always love talking this franchise with other franchise fanatics.
Yeah, pleasure's mine, dude. This series is this whole franchise is close to my heart. Like I said, going back to 95, man. So we got to do this again.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for watching. Thank you for the super chats. Keep playing Resident Evil. If you're somebody that's only played a couple of them, take a look at our rankings, decide who you trust most, and go in that order, I guess. And with that being said, everybody, have a good